How you gonna do me like that? Really? How you gonna wind up on it like that, baby? Look like a fall victim, you just
shining through just for you. Star FM 98.3, 102.7 stereo.
I wanna give you right now. Can I wind up your back? Then it's that push man. You give me good. I give you right now. Just start push back right back to the beat.
Something. Right now we really need a Messiah. Don't take me out of this big disaster. For everything I thought, look, we try it all in vain. Rich or poor, black or white, we feeling this St. Belmont, Citrus, and Diablo. Somebody gotta do something. Somebody gotta fix something. Somebody do something. Somebody gotta run something. Talk down. Losses today and no gain. Hell, fire. Somebody got to ease up the pressure. Like nobody seems to care about the poor. All them rich people close up the door. And who have the head to carry me through and through. Only care about themselves and left for me and you and you know. And dance. Belmont, Leeward, Arima. Somebody gotta run something. Somebody gotta fix something. Somebody do something. Come on. Suffering, heartaches, we get it. Sometimes it makes me feel like revolting. This thing keep going on year after year. How much more could for people bear? Somebody got to put a hand to the wheel. But who don't care in the long run, going to feel. Rio Claro, Enterprise, Sandy Grande, Sando. Somebody run something. Somebody gotta do something. That's how we get it. Youth, giant. We and the elders got to do something. Somebody got to do something quick, quick, quick. The human time bomb done started it. And if you don't do something and turn the thing around, when it bugs, I don't know where they point to run, 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 run. Them dance, Aranas, Amanti, Toko. Somebody gotta do something. Somebody gotta run something. Somebody gotta do something. Somebody, somebody, somebody. Somebody gotta do something. Somebody gotta run something. Somebody, somebody, somebody. Somebody say something. Somebody, 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 somebody. Somebody gotta do something. Somebody gotta do something. Somebody, somebody, somebody. Somebody gotta do Somebody gotta do
Shining through just for you. Star FM 98.3, 104.7 stereo.
Somebody gotta do Somebody gotta do Somebody gotta do Somebody gotta do
All right, it's somebody definitely gonna have to step in. It's an emergency right there. Somebody definitely gonna have to do something as we get ready to get our program on the way. Fiery program this is on the record. With comrade Senators Carlos James and of course our sister there, Keisal Peters. Yeah, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning.
Good morning, Monique. Morning, Keisal. Morning to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I'm happy
Morning.
to be here. Yet another edition of On the Record. Of course, it's the most listened to morning program after morning comrade.
Come on.
On the Star Radio. And we're happy to be here with you another morning here in studio. Of course, if those who are tuning on the live will see the appearances have changed a little bit. Because next to me is yes, none other than Keisal Melissa Peters, and of course, sporting a brand new haircut and hairstyle, and welcome to the studios, the lovely, gracious Keisal Melissa Peters.
Good morning, Carlos. Good morning, Monique. Good morning, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and to all our listeners scattered all over the world. Welcome to another edition of On the Record. For those who are looking at the live, I'm contemplating whether I should put this headphone on my head, because these things, they're so big and they're going. I don't think they'll interact well with my new hairstyle. You see, but I'll do it for the love of the people and the love of labor.
So we had a in studio joke just before going live on the program, about this hairstyle, and it looks very lovely.
Thank you.
I'm done by a North Leeward lady.
Yes.
I wouldn't call the name on air, but we have a lot of talent in North Leeward. So good morning to those who are listening. Of course, there are persons who are already locked in and waiting. Darky definitely is one of them. I know. Good morning. And there's Robert King. There's Glenroy Brung. There's Jacqueline George. And we have Peter Jacob, Clarence Wiley, Monica Hooper, Keturah Lewis. She's on as well. There's Marva, Fordy, as usual, who's locked on. Adeline and Dory Donnelly, yes, who's locked on. I'm not sure if she's here or she's on a ship cruising, but let me say good morning to all those who are tuned in and those who are listening from every part of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. There are those who are locked in all the way from Fancy and Sandy Bay and Orange Hill and Overland, all the way in the north on the other side from Fitzhugh to Chateaubelair, Pittibadel, Rosal, Trumuca, Rosebank, and all the way down to Kingston and the surrounding areas, and in Edinburgh, in Camden Park, in Clare Valley, Vermont, and of course all the way into Union Island. There are persons who are locked on in Grenada, in Barbados, in those especially in St. Kitts, and those in Toronto and New York, Canada, and all the way in the United Kingdom, those who are just returning home from work in the UK who are locked on. Welcome to, of course, yet another edition of On the Record. We're happy to have you on the program. All we simply ask those who are online and sharing the virtual space is to share the live, share the link to the program. Of course, you're listening, you're being informed, but there are other persons who may want to listen and to be informed as well. And we encourage you to share the information, share the message, share the live, and let the people call your families, call your friend, call your neighbors. You say tune in to 98.3 FM, log into our social media pages. On the Record is on, and it's another Tuesday here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Keisal.
Yeah. Well, you big up everybody, so I don't think there's anybody left. Let me see if you. Well, Darky is telling my hairstylist good job. Big up Trevor, Lovon. I see Vincy Power on as well. Good morning again to everybody. So, Carlos, we've been off for about 2 weeks? 2, 3?
Possibly,
because we had Parliament.
And we had Parliament the week before,
Yes.
and last week we had the commencement of the election petition hearings.
Yes.
So we'll talk a little bit about that. And we can also touch a little bit about Parliament and the bills
Yes.
that we had to do a lot of work on
Yes.
to have them ready for a state of passage through all stages in the House. We can touch a little bit on that
as well.
But interestingly, you go right ahead.
I'll tell you, yesterday I was walking through town and I met a good bit of people. What happened? I ain't hearing all you on the radio. You're coming on tomorrow. I said, yeah, we should be on. And, it just goes to show that people are tuned in and they await to hear quality radio programs where they are educated, and we also allow the space to be an interactive space where we discuss national issues, regional issues, and international as well. So it felt good and it warmed my heart as I walked through Kingston yesterday, meeting comrades who are saying, we're looking forward to hearing you on the airwaves tomorrow. So what are we gonna start with? Parliament?
Well, we can touch a little bit
Yeah.
on that, and importantly, we had the passage of a few bills. One in relation to the Pensions Act, an amendment,
Yes.
and also the
compassionate
gratuity bill,
Yeah.
which is now an act of Parliament passed just a few weeks ago here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Yeah.
Of course, when those bills came to the House, the drafting of it, Keisal, we thought that they needed a lot more work.
Yes.
And we were quite happy that they were able to be put into select committee, where a lot of work went into the amendments and inclusion and additions to what the bill is now today, primarily in relation to ensuring that persons who, in relation to the gratuity, are able to list a beneficiary.
Yeah. And those are the non-pensionable
non-pensionable
government workers.
Workers who of the state. And interestingly, we made the case to have within that bill the provision for and what is considered a right to appeal,
Right.
whereby, and I made the point on the floor, if someone who is querying, let's say $200, being short paid by $200 or entitled to $200, and they have not benefited from that, and they rightly should be benefiting from it, and the state decides, well, our calculation is correct, and we decide that we're not paying you this $200, that person now has to hire a lawyer and seek redress in the court, whereby if you have an appeal process inserted in the bill, the legislative amendment there would facilitate having the various a tribunal being impaneled, where there's a right of audience and a fair hearing, and a decision is made there and then as to whether or not that person would be so rightly entitled to what is theirs. Even beyond that, then you go to the court if necessary. But you're saying that someone has to now essentially hire an attorney to go to challenge the state for $200 or $500,
Yeah.
and then the legal fees in relation to that is beyond that. So that was one of the disappointing things which we
Right.
really wanted to see in the bill. Of course, a lot of the amendments and inclusion that you saw came from the opposition, and we would, with the experience of our legal training and having sat in the parliament
Yeah.
before and having sat in cabinet, we're able to help with the refining of those bills, to have them in a state of readiness for assent
Yeah.
from the Governor General. And it goes to show that in a parliamentary system where it's not just the work of the executive, but in the legislative body, the opposition also they have a role.
Yes.
They do have a role to play. And quite frankly, one of the things which we stood against was the bill in which the amendment to the Audit Act,
Oh.
in which you are now criminalizing and penalizing an individual who, for whatever reason, may be in breach of the confidentiality rules under the Audit Act. So someone who is privy to information and disclose that. And then I did outline on the floor there are different ways in how someone can disclose information. It doesn't necessarily have to be mischief.
Yeah.
But it can be in relation to ensuring that you're a whistleblower. And then in modern terms, the terminology whistleblower is someone who, for the greater good, may have information that may think the public needs to know. And it's important that the public is aware of this information. Like, for instance, how they went and spent 50,000 US. I'm just giving an example to paint the flag of St. Vincent on the tail of Inter-Caribbean, which most Vincentians are actually, I understand, are in uproar about.
Yeah.
That decision, quite rightly so, is between the accountant in the tourism authority and the Inter-Caribbean and the CEO. But good conscience would prevail and say, look, listen, we think this is an unjustified spend. We think it's a waste of government resources. The public ought to know this. The opposition ought to know this information. And if you were to divulge that information, you can now be charged, I think, up to $10,000.
Up to $10,000.
And be brought before a court of law for breaching the information that is within the Audit Act. And this is the very first time we're having something like this inserted in the amendment to the Audit Act in the history of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
And it's such a contrast to what penalties existed before under the Audit Act, where someone is found to be an obstructionist, where you are hiding information, destroying records. It attracted a penalty, a similar penalty to the one where we saw in the amendment, up to $10,000. But it was in a case, as I said, where you were found to be obstructionists and hiding information and destroying information. But here we are now, making civil servants liable for disclosing information. And if you recall, during my debate, I was at pains to remind the House that the Audit Office is, under the Constitution, an independent office, right? And the Constitution makes the necessary provisions for the office to do its work. And I also made the point that the Public Accounts Committee is also sanctioned by the Constitution. Therefore, as far as we were concerned, and normally it is the leader of the opposition who leads that committee, the Public Accounts Committee. So as far as we are concerned, on this side of the House, as His Majesty's opposition, this amendment will not stop the Public Accounts Committee from doing its work. So if our political leader and also the leader of the opposition, and I know he will in due course, decides to summon and call a Public Accounts Committee meeting, this amendment, as far as I'm concerned, does not affect the work of the Public Accounts Committee. And I remember when I made the point, because I usually observe people, and I saw the look on some of their faces as if they didn't think about that. They didn't think about the fact that under the Constitution, the Public Accounts Committee still has a right to meet, have meetings, and look at figures with the Audit Office or with the guidance of the Audit Office. I mean, in my time as minister, I've attended, I think, one Public Accounts Committee meeting in the last term that the then opposition leader called, and it was too much. I don't know if you even want to call it a well, this is it, because there was no reports. There was no report coming out from that meeting, but it was at the urging of even their supporters that, look, guy, you've been in leadership for all these years, and you've never called a Public Accounts Committee meeting. There was the question about procedure, and clarity was given by the then Speaker of the House. Even our political leader, when he was Prime Minister, he said, look, when I was opposition leader, these were the steps I took to call meetings. When Adam Eustace was opposition leader, I think he called a few meetings as well, and these were the steps he took. So there's really nothing preventing you from calling a meeting. So it was at much back and forth between our supporters, the NDP supporters, and people saying, look, you really need to be serious about the people's work, because you can't be calling for transparency, accountability, when you are not willing to do the work. And then a meeting was called, but it was incomplete, as we've made the point, because no report ever came out of that meeting. In fact, I sat in the meeting and I was utterly confused about what the purpose of that meeting was. There was no direction. The agenda seemed helter-skelter. But I know when the time comes for our side to summon that meeting, there will be an agenda. And it will be a proper meeting with objectives. And after the meeting is held and concluded, the necessary report will be made to the House so that the people are aware of the outcome of the meeting. So I just felt that we were going down a dangerous slope. And I remember when I was debating, some of the folks on the other side was like, oh, so you don't value confidentiality. And if you recall, when I started, I said, as a banker, you shouldn't be sending your clients information, putting it out there, because confidentiality is that important. As a lawyer, confidentiality is important as well as privilege. They are related, not exactly the same, but they go hand in hand. And I gave other examples where confidentiality is the cornerstone of any professional relationship. But where it appears that civil servants now are being muzzled, and I want the civil servants to pay close attention to this. And I don't know if the Public Service Union has paid enough attention to this, especially in the context where we've seen, let's say over the last 5 years, documents being leaked, and especially within the last year during the campaign,
Yes.
and even after, documents that should be confidential and should be treated as such
Contracts and all of these.
were being sent out helter-skelter. And I made the point in the House as well that as the executive, they must foster an environment where confidentiality should mean something. Because it can't be a case of do as I say but not as I do. You remember when NDP just went into office, a number of questions were being asked of the Prime Minister. For instance, about his son. And his son being in meetings and being here, being there. And our political leader raised the issue of what information the young man had access to. Even people who support the NDP raised the question as well, because we made the point that as ministers, we took an oath in the presence of the Governor General when we are sworn in, and one of them has to do with confidentiality. So we can't be saying, oh, well, civil servants in the audit office must value confidentiality, otherwise you could pay a fine up to $10,000, but yet the Prime Minister has not, in my view, properly address the issue regarding what his son has access to and what he does not have access to. And if you recall, our political leader raised that question. He submitted that question to be posed to the Prime Minister, and it was not allowed.
Yeah.
So you can't, with all due respect to the Prime Minister, you cannot be preaching as the Minister of Finance that information in the government's orbit should be treated as confidential, but yet people affiliated with your party are just sending information out there, as we say, busing files with briefcases and whatnot. So it's either as a country and as professionals, we are serious about confidentiality, or we are not. So that is why I took that strong stance, and I said when I concluded, in its current form, I could not support that bill in its current form, especially you and I made the point about the whistleblowers. What if in the course of doing his or her work, a civil servant observes something that really needs to be brought to the attention and to be dealt with? there's no protection for that person who is doing his or her due diligence. So that bill was very problematic, but it has been passed, and I hope that the civil servants are paying attention, and I hope that the Public Service Union is paying equal attention as well, because I have a feeling that this is just the beginning, Carlos. We may very well see other bills with similar penalties being implemented by this government.
Well, of course, interestingly, we'll wait to see how that develops, and we have to look at that. We want to talk a little bit today about a few more things. Keisal road cleaning program is out. We will touch a little bit on that.
Yeah.
We those who are listening, I know a lot of people have been calling about the election petitions cases. They wanted an update on it, what really transpired, in layman terms, how the case is progressing, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well today. And of course, electricity, cost of electricity. We'll touch a little bit on that later on in the program. But I want to jump in right after you with from the Parliament and go right into your constituency in West Kingston regarding the Fort Charlotte project. I noticed there was a consultation quite recently regarding an update on the project and where it's at. What is interesting, you're not hearing the critical comments coming from the taxi associations. There are several of them. And of course, there are no questions in the Parliament on it, and there's a reason for that. But before, almost every time there's a parliamentary setting, Daniel Cummins will be, well, what about Fort Charlotte and what's going on there? And for every time we will explain that the project is a World Bank project. And because it's a World Bank project, there are several things that we were doing there, including the restorative work, which is not martins and cement and quick work. It is a lot of rehabilitating in a very, putting the fort back in its original form, which is going to take a little bit more detail in terms of the restorative work. And we did inform that it is under a World Bank project. You had to have done social impact assessment and different types of procedural things that you have to go through with the World Bank before you can see the project move into its full form in terms of the rehabilitative work on the fort. Seemingly, Daniel Cummins, who's an engineer, knew how, he had the knowledge of how these things work, and of course played the politics with it. We are now 7-8 months in, and yet they have not even started work on the continuing the fort in terms of rehabilitation. I understand that sometime in September is when they will resume work on the project.
I see.
And just imagine if that was the ULP government delaying a project for well over 8 months, 8, 9, 10 months. All hell will break loose.
Yep.
Including the taxi associations who at the time were saying, well, we have to have the fort open, we have to have the fort ready. You're not hearing a single word from anyone. And that's why I was explaining that the project is under, and now it was under an OECS regional competitive project, a World Bank project, which ended, and it was pretty much subsumed under the Unleashing the Blue Economy project, which is also another World Bank funded project within St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and the OECS, St. Lucia and Grenada is a part of that as well. And that is where the resources are going to come from in terms of ensuring that facility is done to the standard, international standard that is required, because with the World Bank, they have to ensure that there's compliance and it's done in a proper way. So again, we have that's a ULP project which started on the well, even before my time, Keisal, I came in and I met that project going, but really a lot of the administrative work was done under the ULP to ensure that we secured the funding and roll out for that project. And I understand that the delay will go over into, and it is likely that it will go over into the cruise season. When they resume the project, it is going to be during the period where, again, the cruise ships are going to be here. So there's going to be a potential challenge there for taxi operators and tour operators who will use Fort Charlotte as one of the main tourism sites. We are going to see some hiccups there in relation to that. Again, this coming cruise season, 2026, 2027.
Yeah.
So these are some of the things which, when you're in government and the layperson doesn't have an appreciation of how it works and how the government system works. And I would tell you, we would not have had a delay for this long had it been the ULP government. But we have seen further delay on this project, and we're likely not to have the fort again for another cruise season here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The intention was to have that wrapped up at least by last year, and to go into the 2026-2027 season with the reopening of the fort. But unfortunately, we, as a result, I am assuming the change of government, a lot of things took a backseat, including this project. Prioritizing spending may not have been an important agenda item for the NDP government, and we can safely say that we're going to go into the 2026-27 cruise season without Fort Charlotte, which we had scheduled to be completed by last year, 2025. And it is quite frankly now impossible that they can have the fort completed before the end of the cruise season, if they're going to resume work in September of 2026. It is telling that administratively the NDP doesn't have a handle on these projects. Similarly, there are now delays at the Arnorsville Acute Referral Hospital, and I understand the delays are likely to be as much as a delay of over a year in terms of the work, where they should have been at this particular time in the project. They are delayed by a whole year, and you cannot tell me that these are government projects which are well financed, funded, and there are such significant delays on these projects. And it is clearly an indication that the current government doesn't have a handle on these projects, doesn't have an appreciation of how these funding agencies work, in particularly with Fort Charlotte, with the World Bank, and in relation to Taiwan with the hospital, in terms of how to manage these projects. So you have the hospital now delayed by over a year in terms of its work. And Fort Charlotte will see another cruise season without access to Fort Charlotte. And it was scheduled for completion last year, 2025. And then these are the challenges which an NDP government will face and will continue to face because of the lack of experience and doesn't have that institutional knowledge of how these programs and projects are rolled out. And we're seeing a lot of these other projects like that. For instance, there was the talk of the same Unleashing the Blue Economy project in Trumuka Bay, a project which I designed personally for the people of North Leeward, secured the funding under the World Bank, and there was a big announcement in the Parliament. Well, we'll start the work by the middle of the year, and from what I understood of the project, I knew that project will not commence by the middle of the year. The middle of the year was the 6-month mark was June. We're now in August, and we have not seen any work commence on that project as yet. And for the very reason is that the World Bank funding under the UBEC would not be released in time to facilitate that early commencement of the project. What I had done in the last budget, Keisal, was to put into that budget under the Ministry of Tourism about $750,000, a shared project with Mount Twin, public Mount Twin, so that we can have at least the startup capital to commence the work. the foundation for the bathrooms and so on in Chumuka Bay to start the preliminary work, to have expansion of the toilet facilities in Mount Twin, where it's one of the more active and busy beaches on the Leeward side.
One of my favorite
Yes,
beaches
a
too.
lovely beach. And so the 750,000 was to be shared between Mount Twin and Chumuka Bay.
Okay.
To have from local funding to have a start of the project.
Right.
By the time, and you know these World Bank projects and
Yeah.
work. By the time we get around to the release of funds under the UBEC project, we would have been well advanced on the way with the installation of the facility in Chumuka Bay and also the expansion of the facility in Mount Twin. But yet we have seen absolutely no work on any of those projects. And we have passed the 6-month mark when we were told that the project in Chumuka would start. And we know for certain, I've looked at the facility, the beach, there's absolutely no work ongoing there.
And that's a shame, because one of the things I observed, Carlos, even before I became a minister, a senator and a minister, is that we had done a good job. And when I say we, the ULP administration, in upgrading a lot of the tourism facilities, in actually building facilities to enhance enjoyment of these sites. And I remember, I think it may have been 2019. Yeah, it may be 2019, where I had done, like, I was doing an island tour all over the country, and one of the points I had made, I must look for those videos and repost them. One of the points I had made is how wonderful it is to go to a site and you can have a gazebo, you could sit down and eat, you have bathroom facilities, you know, you have like a little tuck shop setting where you could get some food and you can get snacks. And to see that, you know, you as the former Minister of Tourism, you were trying to continue that work.
Yes.
And you did a lot, but even in your own constituency that you represented, trying to upgrade the sites, and now North Leeward is experiencing this delay. And I mean, North Leeward is a beautiful part of the country. You know, I have very fond memories as a child visiting and, you know, enjoying some of these same beaches that you're mentioning. So it's sad that nothing has been done.
We can safely say that the intent there was to have that facility in Mount Twin expanded and ready for the opening of this season coming. The one in Chumuka would have been well advanced and close to completion, at least having bathroom facilities by this season coming. That was the intention. And to hear the announcement being made on a project which you didn't handle administratively, you didn't negotiate it, you don't know how the funding was to be sorted, and you're announcing the start of a project which I negotiated, I created, I'm the architect of the project. You announce it will start by the middle of the year. We're now in our August. The 6-month mark has passed, and not a single shovel has been dug into starting the foundation for that project. So here you have, you know, people in opposition who doesn't understand how government work. They make all these pronouncements. They're going to do this. They're going to do that in the first 90 days. In the first this and that. They come to government and realize that, hold on, you don't have a magic wand in your hand to create things or to make things. It's not Dolly House. This is serious work. A lot of the administrative work that we did, Keisal, as a government and as a cabinet, a lot of them don't have that experience, that working experience, to drive these things, to drive projects in the country, to ensure that there are resources available to commence projects, to ensure that they are done on time. They don't have the capacity to do that. So they come to Parliament and they come to the cabinet and they think, well, you know, as we're in a government and the apologists would say, give them time. But when you transition into government, you don't need time to you have to stall projects and to affect communities and the working people by holding and delaying projects. What you have to do is to be able to transition very quickly learn the process, understand how government work, and to ensure that you're able to function and continue the process of governance in the country. And what we have found in St. Vincent and the Grenadines is we have had a lack of that, significantly so. Lack of appreciation and understanding of the system of government, how it works, the inexperience and the lack of leadership of Lorraine Friday is very evident and very obvious to many people. Even their own supporters, they raise issue with that. Clearly, he's not fit. He's not fit for the time, and you can't go to the seat of prime minister with a plate, an L plate. You can't learn on the job. This is something that is done with experience, vast amount of experience, whether in opposition or in the private sector. And then you come to government, you come to governance with a level of aptitude, knowledge, understanding, and a leadership acumen and quality in terms of being able to run a country. And we have clearly seen here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines is a prime minister who does not have the capacity, does not have the leadership acumen, does not have the ability to run a country. And that is really what effectively is affecting St. Vincent and the Grenadines now in terms of leadership and governance. And it is a trickle-down effect now on many of the projects in all of the ministries, where we are seeing delays upon delays, where a lot of the projects which we announced, which we signed the contracts for release of funds for, millions of dollars, the monies are there, available and ready to do the work. And you cannot see these projects take off because they don't have the capacity or the understanding to manage them, rule and run them. And that is really what it is. And that is why Fort Charlotte has been delayed for them. And that is why the hospital is delayed by over a year. And that is why projects like the Tromaka Bay facility, which we negotiated under ULT government, which we designed and created. The designs for that project, I left them there with the National Parks, Rivers and Beaches Authority. They were done in-house at the Ministry of Transport and Works. And the money was there available in the budget for it. The capital was there. The designs were there. The electrical, the plumbing, and the architectural designs, everything was there and ready to go. And for you to tell me that we're now going into month 8 of the year, and we have had a transition, and we're now going, November is going to be the anniversary, the 27th, and you're telling me a significant amount of government projects have not kick-started, have not rolled out, even though you have allocated funding, you have designs, you have approvals ready to go. And these are the things which quite rightly we talk about, and it is in no way being critical for critical sake, but to highlight some of the weaknesses of this NDP administration, significant weaknesses. And Vincentians ought to take note of this, that you don't transition to a government that is learning on the job. You have to come to government and have to come to the executive with a level of experience and ability to do the work.
And readiness.
And preparation to do the work. Yeah. And that is essentially, our contention is that we have seen a transition, but someone said recently, well, if you thought things were bad under the ULP, things are worse under the NDP. And you're hearing this throughout the length and breadth of the country from even their own supporters. Yep. Because these are some of the things that we highlight. And when you, at a high administrative level, when you have this level of inefficiency, lack of experience, this nonchalant approach to how governance work, and you have it at such a high level, that then is a representation of the general government and its attitude. And of course, if you have delays in projects, you have slow economic growth, and then all of these things then translate into the crunch and the pinch that we're feeling right now on the ground from people. A lot of that you have to squarely put the blame on the NDP administration, because they don't have an appreciation of how to make things work and how to have the effectiveness of government to ensure that there's a trickle-down effect and the working people are benefiting significantly from what is taking place. You go to what is happening with Vinlec. A lot of people are blaming Vinlec. Vinlec is just a supplier. The major shareholder, let us not forget, the major shareholder in Vinlec is the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. 100% ownership of Vinlec is the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And when you have a prime minister comes to the people, make an announcement of subsidies, and he's going to ensure that we cap the rate of fuel and the fuel surcharge and the fuel at the pump. Misinformation. Because what Vinlec had relayed to him was that, look, listen, this system we have here, the bonus malus system we have here, is where we purchase on a 3-month average. The question is whether you pass this on to the consumer or whether the government subsidize. Vinlec on its own cannot subsidize those rates. So let us not put the blame on the CEO of Vinlec and Vinlec as a statutory body. The shareholder, the majority shareholder of Vinlec, 100% ownership, is the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And that is where the buck stops. That is where the decision making. If the shareholder for Vinlec makes a cabinet decision and said, look, we have to obviously absorb some of these costs. We can't pass them on to consumers. And this is how we're going to do it. We're going to ensure that we put A, B, C, D in place. Or we're going to ensure that we have this program being facilitated or subsidized in such a way that the working people are not at a loss. And then Vinlec, the board of Vinlec, instructs the CEO and the management staff as to the decision. That is how it's done. So let us not fool ourselves into thinking that it is Vinlec that has to bear that responsibility. Vinlec is just is a supplier. Vinlec is providing you with electricity. But Vinlec as an entity cannot make that decision to subsidize without a decision from the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, who, for all intents and purposes, is the only shareholder, a 100% shareholder of Vinlec. So that decision lies with the state administration. And I want us to appreciate that. So let us not go by Vinlec and protest, Let us protest by the administrative center in which the cabinet meets and where the prime minister sits, or by the minister of energy. That's where the protests ought to be. Because the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines is the majority and sole owner of Vinlec. And the board and the staff at Vinlec are mere employees. So we have to have that appreciation. And I can bet you, if Comrade Ralph was there, it would have been Comrade Ralph name calling, not Vinlec.
Of course.
Look at the high prices in electricity. We Comrade Ralph do, and Ralph do, So let us not pretend as if we don't know that Vinlec is owned by the state. That decisions as it relates to Vinlec, yes, there's a board. Who appoints the board? The cabinet of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Who makes the decision as the sole shareholder of Vinlec? The government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Who chairs the cabinet and who's the principal chief person in this hot seat of the government? The Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, who happens to be Lauren Friday. So Vinlec is not owned by a multinational corporation of conglomerates who are somewhere in some boardroom fleecing off of and profiteering off of the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and exploiting people. That's not Vinlec. It is the majority shareholder of Vinlec is the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Say if you want to point your attention to any policy decision to be taken by VINLEC, point that attention to the administrative building and Bay Street. That's where the decision making comes from.
You have to say complex.
The financial complex. Yeah.
I remember, no, just a light moment though. Somebody was doubting me when, when I said third floor administrative building. I was like, that's not a financial complex.
Yeah, where's that located?
Yeah. I said, yeah.
Complex, man, complex.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is where the decision making in terms of policy on energy, energy security, a broad-based approach to that, and someone made the point earlier, quite rightly so. I mean, we should be looking at renewables.
Yeah.
But of course, we have to look at it in a very wholesome and pragmatic way. Where sustainability of renewable projects are at the front of this thing. And all of that, when we started the geothermal project, it was precisely for this purpose and reason.
And we were vilified for it.
Guess who was criticizing the geothermal project? The NDP.
And they were laughing. So much so people said, is IMEXO for Europe?
Yeah.
And all them kind of things.
Yeah. Guess who was criticizing the geothermal project?
We were exploring the possibility of renewable energy. And then I think the Minister of Energy said recently that they were going to cap the wells or something like that.
Yes, not having appreciation that the wells are in fact already capped. What is happening there? And I'm intimate to the project because as a sustainable development minister at the time, and you touch a bit on in climate change and all of these things, and renewable energy and the sustainability of energy security and all of these things. What is happening out there at the geothermal project, which I was at pains trying to get them to understand in the budget. They're going to cap the wells, and you can't cap a well that is already capped. The wells are capped. But what is happening? It is done in a way where it is not capped tight to shut the pressure down. It is to allow, if there's a buildup of pressure, to allow it to seep out. Because the valves, if they're capped, they can then, when you have that buildup of pressure, you can have an adverse effect. So it is capped in a way where it is allowing for the pressure to seep out when there's a buildup. That is essentially what it is. But it is capped. What obtained now is that there's a new technology on the market that we're able to now go into the project and to do what is called the fracking, the extraction of the heat. The heat is there. The issue of its permeability. It is evident that it's there, but it needs now a more modernized form of technology to have the extraction done, rather than the traditional fracking, which we started in terms of its operation.
Okay.
So there are companies who have explored this and the new technology that is available, and it is tested that it is available. But what I understand, and I got this information quite recently, that not a single soul in the cabinet has a working knowledge of this thing. And when the professionals were trying to explain to them what transpired and what it is that is required now, they really had no clue about it. There was no reaction. I understand Friday then went to, I don't know if it's Martinique or Dominica, and saw a similar process in terms of geothermal, and then came back and said, the light bulbs went off. I suddenly understand what the guys were saying now. That's when he got it. Somebody told me that in confidence. I want to mention the person name, but he had to leave St. Vincent, go somewhere else, and then he understood now what the guys were saying on the ground in relation to the project. He had no clue, absolutely no clue about it.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious, and he didn't hide his ignorance. He said, well, I didn't get it at the time. I know when I went to the island, I saw it there, and I know the light bulb went off. I know gather what the guys were saying. So the technology is available. They were saying, guys, the technology is available. The wells are capped. They're not fully capped in the sense of they allow the steam once there's a build-up to come out. But for all intents and purposes, the wells are capped. So to come to the parliament or to make a public statement that they're not capped is being misinformed. That's the first thing.
And to say they're not capped and that you're gonna cap them.
Yes.
Is
misrepresentation. And not having a full appreciation of what is required now to resume the program and the project. That is the part. They didn't have a clue as to what was going on or the technology that is needed. And when he went somewhere and then he saw them doing it, he did a tour, and then he came back now and realized, oh, that's what they were saying. That okay, I now get it. And that is the Prime Minister of a country. You know?
Slow on that.
That is the Prime Minister of a country. And I got this information from reliable sources.
I wonder if our Dominican friends spoke in Patois. I wonder if it's Patois he understood better than...
There was a level of frustration because the entire cabinet had no clue what the guys were talking about.
Wow.
So in terms of a policy position going forward, there was none. The experts couldn't settle on a policy position because they couldn't get one from the current cabinet because they had no clue what was going on as it relates to geothermal. And Friday went up the islands, heard about this thing, investigated it. He went there for a tour, and then on his way back now, the light bulb went off. And then admittedly said, boy, you know, I didn't really realize this was what the fellas were talking about. He didn't hide his ignorance. And I'm not saying when you become Prime Minister, you have to know everything.
No.
But, geez, I mean, you have guys explaining these things to you. And you're still in grasping it, and the frustration, and the fellas who were doing the explanation didn't tell me this. But you can imagine the frustration in the minds of those people in the ministry, the department, the energy unit, and the consultants who have worked tirelessly over the years on this geothermal project.
And
the frustration that they must be going through, because the fellas who they have to now take instructions from in terms of policy has absolutely no clue what they're doing in relation to
and
that.
These folks are very dedicated, and I could tell you that they enjoy the work that they do as the technocrats in the energy unit, because I visited the sites with them and with an aim to get a better understanding as to what they do, how they're able to do it, how it benefits the country, and what steps we can take to make it even better. So I remember the last visit we had with the energy unit, I think it was out at Argyle, where the solar farm is out there.
Yes.
And when I was Minister of Foreign Affairs, all of our ambassadors and our consul general, they were there, and we were just getting a better understanding as it relates to renewable energy, because our ambassadors naturally would be out there interacting with other countries, seeking out opportunities, possible investments. So it was a good educational session, and I could see that they were very enthusiastic about their work. And as a minister, I got a better understanding as to what they do. So I could just imagine the frustration that they may have felt, you know, and they're usually thorough in the explanations. I remember one time I had to attend a meeting in Italy with Caribbean, Latin America, and it's a partnership we have with Italy, and I had to chair the segment that dealt with energy, and especially renewable energy, and what our experiences have been in our attempts to utilize renewable energy in terms of hydro, solar, and our quest for geothermal energy. And the folks at the energy unit, they gave me a very comprehensive brief, which I read. And naturally, I always have questions, so, you know, I reverted with questions, and they clarified, so that when I spoke as the minister representing St. Vincent and the Grenadines, I was able to speak with clarity and understanding and say to our partners, look, we are here, but we are trying to take this thing higher. And this is the type of support we need, whether it be sharing of technological advancements that could assist us in our quest to further utilize renewable energy. Because one of the things about this, and we make the point as small island states, we are always having to play catch up. So the bigger countries who've dealt with fossil fuels for decades, they made their millions and billions, and now it's almost as if they flip the script and say, oh well, we switch into renewable energy now. It's like I had said one time in our meeting, it's like the popular kids in school getting the latest brand name items and then telling the less fortunate kids, well, dine in style again and you have to come with new shoes now.
Yeah.
And when I said that, the meeting they started to laugh because it was so relatable. But that is how, as small island developing states, we feel. So where now these same bigger countries who've made their billions from fossil fuels are now telling us switch to renewable energy, I would say to them, well, we need support. We need support when it comes to the technology, when it comes to the intellect. So the people with the knowledge and who can come and help us with implementing, etc. We need that type of support from you. And in the sense of trade, in the World Trade Organization, I always made the point that it was not as forthcoming as we would like as small states to get the assistance from the larger states, the more developed states.
Yeah.
So, it's something that we were very passionate about as a government. But I guess...
So to bring the point back home, Keisal, when we talk about energy security, we know that there's not a developed policy from the NDP government. We know that he did a false start in promising to have subsidies in place for persons in terms of fuel and the fuel surcharge as it relates to electricity and fuel at the pump. We know those things were misleading the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It didn't happen. And we know for a fact that the Prime Minister himself doesn't have a clue or an appreciation as it relates to the use of renewable energy, geothermal to be more specific. And there's no clear policy directive in how we can move away or mitigate away from heavy reliance on crude. And of course, when we talk about blaming VINLEC for what is taking place currently, just remember that VINLEC is owned by the people and the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It is 100% shareholdership and ownership by the people, and in particular, the cabinet of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. They do have that, what I would say, responsibility to ensure that policy is in place to cushion some of these fall-offs, which we should be experiencing as a result of the high cost of electricity in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Let us not put the blame on the CEO of VINLEC and the board of directors. The board of directors take instructions from the cabinet of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and the NDP who is in office now. Let us put the blame where it is and where it should be, because as I said earlier, had it been Comrade Ralph there, a lot of us would be saying, what is Ralph doing to address this situation? And now all of a sudden you're bawling VINLEC. No, it's not VINLEC. What is the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, who's the sole shareholder of VINLEC, doing to address this issue? That is what we need to be talking about.
And you know what would have been ironic, Carlos? I know with all confidence that our administration would have already presented to the people or possibly rolled out a comprehensive list, and not just a list, but we would have started implementing measures to alleviate the pressures that people are feeling. And I have seen in instances where we have done that as an administration in the wake of some of our most difficult times, and people still were blaming Ralph. So you make the point that if we were in office, it would have been Ralph. Where Ralph doing? In the face of rolling out relief measures.
Yep.
I very much believe, and we said this when you mentioned the task force, and they eventually picked up what you were saying. Comrade would have come into cabinet and say, fellas, we need to, this thing is gonna hit us and we're gonna feel it, and we need to look at some measures to ease the tension and the pain for people.
No, I will tell you something. In us announcing that there ought to be a task force to deal with the issue of the rising cost and inflation, that the projected inflation at the time. We didn't just make the announcement of a task force. We also gave a number of different things which we can look at to ease the cost of living and to ensure that we're able to subsidize the ordinary working people in St. Vincent and different things. I believe they were so pressured into coming with that announcement because we had done it. They were pressured and we forced their hand. But the announcement was so premature that when he came and announced, we put in a cap on fuel at the gas stations. We're ensuring that VINLEC, once it goes to a certain amount, we're going to put a cap on the fuel surcharge. They were all misleading information because none of that happened. Absolutely none of that happened. And I believe they were pressured because we had made the announcement here. We forced their hands. He came too early without having a full appreciation or understanding how this thing is to work. Made these announcements and pronouncements which he himself and his government could not honor. But had that been Comrade Ralph, Ralph would have fooled the people.
Yeah.
Not a soul came out and said, well, Lauren Friday, you announced a month ago that you put in a cap on fuel at the pump. Once it goes past a certain amount, the government will absorb the cost. You announced that our electricity bills, you would stabilize it and ensure that you subsidize the cost. None of those things happened. And the fella got a free pass. Not a single soul came out and said, well, hold on, Friday, where are the subsidies you made that big announcement about? Were they just lies? Was it that you intended to, but you had a deep misunderstanding of how these things work? So you misapplied the information and made these pronouncements with an understanding which you yourself did not even appreciate? Who came to the public and said, well, Lorraine, you messed up? Nobody came out apart from on this program on Comrade Ralph and other persons on the radio, Star Radio. Not a single soul, no single consumer association, even the business community, the Chamber of Industry and Commerce, who should have a voice in this thing to say, well, listen, we are small businesses who are also struggling. There's the manufacturing sector,
fisheries.
Those in the manufacturing sector, especially who are using equipment, heavy equipment and so on, to agro-processing and water, those are doing the filtered water. And so. Those things are not cheap to produce with high cost of fuel. How is our local manufacturing sector surviving? And then you come to the public, you make a grand announcement of subsidies, nearly all of which you could not honor. Within 4 weeks of that announcement, the price of everything went beyond what you said you were going to cap, the rate at what you're going to cap. And not a single NGO or organization came and put this man in check. That is the part that is also alarming. Is how easy the NDP is allowed to fail and to make errors and pronouncements on policy and decisions. And they are right-thinking people who may whisper to one another and say, well, the fella didn't understand this thing, But nobody is coming to the public and say, well, hold on, let us hold these people accountable. And Lorraine got a free pass at that. But I believe he was pressured into making those announcements because we called it first. And when he came, he did not have an appreciation of how the system works in relation to VINLEC, their billings, how they purchase, the the rolling 3-month average in terms of fuel and securing energy and so on in terms of energy security. Absolutely no clue about how those things work. And I believe that was fundamentally what the problem was. So when he made the announcement, he was totally misinformed and out of his league in relation to an appreciation of those things. That is the man who's Prime Minister. That is the man who's Prime Minister, Keisal. How's the road cleaning program going?
Well, a whole heap of mix-up bacchanal. So let's start at the beginning. I like to set context, Carlos. Was it a week ago or maybe 2 weeks ago? I saw a post from the Minister of Works. It came to my attention on July 20th. I'm not sure if that's the date he posted it, and I am going to read a Facebook post. All persons throughout South Leeward who are interested in working in summer road cleaning program are invited to register at the constituency office in Camden Park tomorrow, Wednesday and Thursday, 9 a.m. to 12 noon. No one will be accepted after. Also, if you have a truck and you are interested in transporting materials off the road, you are also invited to attend. Thank you. Now, just looking at it, I don't know if people found that post problematic. But immediately when I saw it, I found it problematic. Here we have a sitting government minister announcing that if you want to be employed under the road cleaning program, you have to come to his office in Camden Park, which is the NDP's constituency office for South Leeward. The road cleaning program, as far as I am aware, Carlos, is not an NDP program. It has become a staple because at this time of the year, and I think Christmas time as well, we see the road cleanup. And as a citizen, I'm appreciative of it, right? And I think we all are. But my understanding is that this program is under the auspices of Braxa. So my first question to the minister: why should people of South Leeward, and I'm assuming if South Leeward people have to go to the South Leeward NDP office, I'm assuming throughout the country, wherever you are registered, you have to go to your constituency NDP office to register. I haven't seen it, but I am assuming. I could be wrong, and I will be corrected if that is not true. But South Leeward people had to go to the NDP office. Why do people have to go to the NDP office of the rep of South Leeward, who is also the Minister of Works, for a program that is being implemented by Braxa? And I just want us to sit with that for a little while. Now, this is not speaking for the sake of speaking and opposing for the sake of opposing. That post, Carlos, was entirely improper. Even if, as the minister said, if you are interested in working in the summer cleanup program, go to Braxa from such and such time. Or if they had set it out in the different, if you're from whichever constituency, this day you go and register to be a part of the program. And we are being strict with the time. So lunchtime, 12 p.m. is the cutoff time. After that, you will not be accepted. But run everything through Braxa. Set up a station where people can come and register. Why should people have to go to your political office to register for road cleaning program? So, what message, the second question, what message are you sending to people who are interested? Because you're sending to me, and Carlos would weigh in, you're sending a strong message, you're sending a message to your supporters, and you are sending a message to Labour Party supporters and people who might be indifferent, because there are some people who couldn't care less whether Wednesday fall on a Friday, and they couldn't care less who's in office. But I digress. What message are you sending? Is it that you know that a ULP supporter will never feel comfortable in approaching the doors of an NDP office to go put down the name? I mean, let me talk the things then. And this is the party that had a lot to say about governance, but they are demonstrating day by day their lack of understanding as it relates to governance. It is improper. The program is implemented by Braxa. No Vincentian should have to go to an NDP office to get their name put down to be able to work on that program. Yeah. And it has left a bitter taste in the mouths of a lot of people. Carlos, if we had done that while in office, not even the holiest of water could have washed us. Highly improper.
It was never a practice for us.
It was never a practice.
Never.
And I remember as a minister, I get licks. I sure you get licks too. People would come to me and I'm like, that is Braxa. You have to speak to the folks at Braxa, because we don't get involved in that. And a lot of our supporters didn't understand that. But that is an aspect of governance that is very important. You can't use.
You may want to say, even if you had some involvement, it was always at the community level. Persons walking along with Braxa to say, okay, well, you know, I have a family down here who has to go back to school, and nobody in the house working. We want to help get them out, and they will get their names down. But it was never go to a
minister's constituency office
to register for him to go on any program. That was never the case.
So I just want us to start there before we proceed to say what is the state of the program now being implemented. I wanted us to begin from the start, and that's a bad start.
Well, I heard in some constituencies, if not all of them, they've changed out most of the gang leaders and the timekeepers. Removed persons who were quote-unquote identified as Labour comrades and Labour supporters, and put in place new timekeepers, new gang leaders. And even in North Central Windward, the constituency in which Comrade Ralph is the parliamentary representative, I heard Chieftain called around and send message to persons to say, tell them Chieftain say they're not going out. Tell them, I say so. We're not going out on any program. I don't know if there are other persons who have done that, but they was relayed to me, even in North Central, that was the case.
Wow.
And this is really quite shocking to hear, because the funny thing is, when you drive across the roads, you would see people come out in NDP t-shirts in our time, cleaning the roads, you know.
Listen, and they used to shout me,
No,
and I shout them.
You didn't have to ask whether they were NDP. We never more or less politicize it to say, oh, if you're NDP, you can't go out. But you would know they were NDP people in the gangs, because they came out wearing the NDP t-shirts. that was the part that was quite interesting.
Yeah.
So you can't say, well, how do you know they were NDP? They wore their t-shirts when there was a road cleaning program, and they were employed under ULP government. Because it was never about whether it's red or yellow. It was always really about ensuring that, especially during the summer program, families with children to go back to school, that was always the priority. It was never, oh, well, they're NDP. No, it was always about, they have 4 or 5 children in the house. Mother and father, or is a single parent household, we have to get the mother out because she has to buy stuff for her kids. That was always the priority, especially during the August period. There are comrades who I know were Labour supporters who didn't have children, and you know, they will call me and say, oh, well, I ain't get to go out. And I say, comrade, listen to me. You know, I understand that. You know, he's a comrade, but I want you guys hold with me for a while, because remember, you have those with the children, they have to go back to school and so on. That is the priority now in the August period for the program. You know, in December, man, we go make sure we organize, help you with something, man, don't worry, sir. Very often I did that, and they understood at the time. They said, well, okay, comrade, I understand what you're saying. You know, I see a couple of my neighbors them with the children, and then they're gone. So I said, all right, well, that is the main purpose of the program. But don't tell me that you have parliamentary reps telling people, go to his constituency office, painted yellow with yellow stickers and so on, to put your name down. And don't tell me there are persons who are not even parliamentary reps sending messages to tell people, I took you off, you're not going out, sending threats and so on. That is the state of where we are with the road program. And someone said recently, all of a sudden, this road thing is a big thing now. You know?
It's a big deal.
Because under Labour, look at that's the only kind of job we can provide for people. No, it is literally the only jobs, because there have been no new jobs created under the NDP. You have to come into office promising to create jobs, especially for young people. In the 8 months they have been there, they have not created a single new job. So now this road program, of course, it is like gold, because this is the only thing that they have an offer for people, and as it relates to young people. Remember how they used to criticize the YES program, youth exploitation program. That's what he used to call it. I heard him used to say in his own words, calling the program that. All they're doing is exploiting the young people, not appreciating that there are people who started on the YES program, later went on to seek full employment, later went on to college, later went on to university, because that is what the program was primarily about, ensuring that we shifted people from joblessness, ensuring that young people had the experience, the working experience. And you know, when you start to work as a young person, age 16, 17, 18, you know, though it's an apprenticeship program, your whole mindset changes. Your attitude towards your discipline, showing up to work, being punctual, being your dress code, you know, taking a bit more pride in yourself, learning something new for the very first time on a job experience. Your whole attitude and mindset as a young person changes. And that is what this YES program was about. But they criticize that program so much. No, that is the best thing since sliced bread for young people, because that is the only thing that they can offer. The road program They have not created a single job in the 8 months they have been there. So, of course, this thing is like gold. That is what it is. It is the biggest thing right now for the NDP. Going out on the road.
When they previously looked down on it.
Yeah.
And you know, the road cleaning, as I said, it's a very important feature in terms of public spaces and the upkeep of certain public areas. So I am very appreciative of the work that is done by the gangs going out and clearing the drains, etc. Because especially now we are in hurricane season, rainy season, you know, if drains are blocked, then the drains they'll fill up and start overflowing into the streets, creating all sorts of hazards. So, you know, it's very important. But I always make the point, and for those of you who've been listening to me for a long time, that I don't understand NDP's relationship, the way they speak about poverty, the way they look down on certain jobs, and then their supporters will be looking, oh, well, that's why that's all you could get. And, you know, those sort of demeaning things. But yet, no, as you say, it's the best thing.
No, it's goal right now, and they're fighting tooth and nail. There are people fighting for it. Yeah, literally fighting for it.
And there are also people who have stepped back. And people have said, because the example you gave in North Central, in other communities, in West Kingstown, in North Windward, and I'm sure other constituencies, people have received the message that they've been taken off. They now walk.
Okay, so there's a question. This person says, good morning, comrades. Do you know if there will be any assistance for the technical and the vocational schools?
Assistance in what sense?
Well,
for back to school?
I guess so.
Well, this is another thing. And I think I spoke about it briefly. I am not sure what is happening with the back to school grants that were offered previously under the Ministry of National Mobilization. Now it's the Ministry of Social Welfare, I believe. I believe that will be in their portfolio. I don't know. There are people who have been coming to me as the former minister inquiring when is this thing going to start, because they haven't heard anything. And I've said to them, I don't know. I honestly can't tell you, because by now, Carlos, we're in August. By now, the list would have been, not the list, the forms would have been available from the board members across the country for the different geographical areas, as well as the office in town, as well as the schools. Because what people didn't realize, and even me, when I came in as Minister for National Mobilization, I had a better appreciation of how the assistance was given. So in some instances, the schools, the principals, the teachers are asked to identify children or students who need help, whose parents may not have it financially and will definitely benefit from the back to school grants. So we did it on the school level, the education level. We also did it on the community level. And this is where, with the assistance of some of the same teachers and principals and the board members and the case workers, they would go in and speak to the families, or some of the families may come to the office, get their information, and then we will determine the level of help that can be given to them. And then you have the community level for the different constituencies, where the board members of the Public Assistance Board will ensure that people come and register to get the assistance. So people are asking, and I honestly don't know what to tell them.
let me just put quite frankly what is the state of play.
I don't even know if the Public Assistance Board has been constituted since the new government came into office.
This government
That is another
so
issue.
unprepared to manage this country that even the school term had to be pushed back. And I want to tell you something about the school term being pushed back. A week before the announcement, I was out by Comrade Ralph, okay, before he left the state. And he turned to me and he said, schools would likely not open on time. I said, Comrade, you sure about that? And you would swear this man had somebody sending a smoke signal to him. He said, no.
I had a crystal ball.
Our crystal ball. It was not, it is based on his experience.
Yes.
He said, by now, when we were there, we would have already called Green. And he mentioned the names in the Ministry of Education. We would have put them over the coals. How many schools, the school repair program, what is the budget?
Furniture.
How many furniture would and listen, these guys, these technical guys would come and will grill them from A to Z because we want to ensure, because you miss school by a week, the deadline, to have school ready by a week. It's not the Ministry of Education and the technocrats' fault, It's where Ralph and them do.
Yeah.
The Ministry of Education.
Yeah.
It was never the technical people. So we had to ensure that we looked at meticulously at the programs. Enough furnishing was procured. All of the repair work was done. The budget was allocated and provided to the Ministry of Transport through Braxa to ensure the rehabilitative work is done. And education now, they dealt with the furnishing. And not just furnishing for students, but also furnishing for teachers. And remember Friday say, let them do their work. We don't micromanage. It's not about a matter of micromanaging. It's about taking accountability. We only used to delay schools if you had like some major disaster or something. But not in a situation where it is a normal and regular operation. We had no major disasters in 2026. No major issues that would set back the schools in operating. And you're telling me, not even that you can get right? You can't even open schools on time? Because nobody is there doing the checking and the balances and making sure sufficient budget allocation is available and accessible and ready for the Ministry of Education. And sometimes when they come with a figure, they say, well, we have to order how much pieces of furnishing, desks and chairs for this school or that school. We say, no. We sometimes would visit the schools in our constituencies. And we spoke to the principals. And we had the number. We knew what were the shortcomings. And we said, but tell me about Westwood. You said Westwood only need five pairs of desks and chairs, but the principal told me that they have about 10 missing from this classroom. So how come you have 5? We would scrutinize the technocrats because we ourselves went into our constituencies, check the schools that had missing, sometimes the children, they mash up the louvers, they mash up the light switch. You would believe some of these things were done by students, the kind of vandalism that was taking place, They take one of the chair foot and they beat out the electric switch on the door, next to the door.
Oh my.
So you can't even put on the light in that classroom because the switch was broken.
And the parents go make noise.
And sometimes, they wait until the last week of school. When they're going home, they know they're going home, and that's when they mash up the furniture,
Yeah.
They will fine all school term until the last week when there's no class. And they still have to come to school. And they take the chairs, they turn them into cricket wicket
Yeah.
in the classroom sometimes. all kind of things.
And then come September, their parents are arguing, oh, my child ain't gonna check for
Yeah. So we knew
We knew the children we had. We knew.
And what were the challenges at the schools and the institutional gaps they had. And we visited the schools. At the graduations, I will tell you, I went to every graduation in my constituency once I was in the country. And not just go and sit down and hand out trophies, and look good, But I had I printed all of the results for every single school in my constituency. I knew the names of every student. Those who succeeded and did well, and those who also had remedial challenges, because we have to identify them and work with them, and question the principals as to why, how come your percentage of your fallen this year? What are the gaps? How can we help you? What is the ministry not providing you? Why you have a fall off in your results this year, this academic year?
Okay, there's this person who want to find out this. There are also children who are working with some of the truckers in the road cleaning programs presently. This is illegal because this is termed as a child labor.
That should not happen.
Yeah,
Absolutely should not happen.
And while I read this, from this person, with the little saga on the roads, yesterday I was off and I was home and, heard the little quarreling, only to find out that persons were actually walking around and looking for persons to fill gangs, because apparently one lady went to a particular gang and said to ask her for an ID card. And when the lady presented her ID card to her, she told her that she was too old and she need to go home. They don't employ old people. Right? And that actually, stir a little thing. So for folks in Sandy Bay, for sure, they're looking for persons to work in gang.
And that could have been a grandmother who had
grandchildren,
without parents and living with the grandmother. So there's all of these things, and there are all these social dynamics as to who get preference and who goes out and so on. And then you have to take these things into consideration. But going back to the issue of the preparedness for school. Because we went to the schools, we had working relationships with the principals. Not that you're meddling with the Ministry of Education's work, but if you're representing a constituency, you have to also be the eyes and ears and looking out for your schools, your principals, your students, and the families.
And you have to be informed so that when Braggs and the other folks come to cabinet, you can say, well, there's an issue at this school, and I don't know if you all know about it.
Right, so when they come and they say, oh, well, the budget for repairs at Chateaubriand, we are only spending 20,000. They said, no, clearly. Because you did a walkthrough and you spoke to the principal. And the fencing for the school compound is done. That alone is about 50,000. You go to the different classrooms and they have to do electrical work. That alone is 20,000. So you say, no, your numbers are off. And you would make representation for your constituency and your schools and help the principals, because they will then say to you, these are my shortcomings, these are my gaps. My numbers are off this year because I didn't have enough teachers in this particular discipline. And you say, no, well, I want teachers. You have to get me teachers for my constituency and for this particular school too. That's how you do. You representation is not just physically being there and showing up, but there are also other administrative things that you do, which these guys didn't learn this. They don't know how to do this because they have not been in government and they lack that experience. So when you're dealing with the Ministry of Education and you're dealing with Braggs, you have all the working knowledge of every educational institution in your constituency as a cabinet member. And you're able to take them through line by line to ensure that their numbers are correct. The budget that they have for your constituency and your schools, and what the request of the principals. By the time you go back to school in September, the principals will tell you 50% of what they asked to be repaired would not be repaired. Because they're going to force cut the budget. That's the first thing. They don't have the resources to that. Because you know, as the rep now, you have to make sure that even with the tight resources, you squeeze and you pull from the ministries and from the Ministry of Finance a little bit more, because this school need to be fenced. This school need additional lighting. This school need additional furnishing. This school need more teachers. And you do that through your representation as a parliamentary representative. So nobody bothered to check on the furnishing, the procurement. Nobody bothered to check on whether or not the school repair program is being rolled out effectively and the resources are sufficiently allocated for Braxa and all of the contractors and so on to do the repairs, the necessary repairs. And I will tell you, the week that they push school back by, they would still not be ready by then. They would still not be ready. They will force and open the schools, but there will be some schools opening and they will not be ready for the new school term. Because that is where you can see the lack of leadership is evident. It goes beyond just the technical, and it goes beyond just the operational, but it also goes to the administrative component of it. Driving these things, making sure that there's accountability, ensuring that who's supposed to get the procurement numbers in and the orders in, get them done in time. That you're on deadline, you're meeting the deadlines, ensuring not just that, but sometimes you put in an order for furnishing. The builder gets the order, but he doesn't get an advance. He needs money to buy the raw materials. He ain't get the advance until 2-3 weeks after. How is he supposed to build the furnishing? Ensuring that the Ministry of Finance now meet its obligation now to release the funding. So that the contractors can get the advance to procure the material. That's how these things are done. And if it is that the Minister of Education, because he primarily has that responsibility, and the other parliamentary representatives and the Prime Minister doesn't have an appreciation of how these things work, all in to take some classes, man. All itself need to go back and take some classes on these things. Because there's absolutely no reason, no justification whatsoever why schools should be delayed by a week in its reopening. Absolutely no reason for that. And I've just outlined to you the amount of, you can tell, Monique, by the long list of things, the checks and balances that have to go in here to manage this thing, the process. Because you know what the issues are. You know what is going to happen in terms of the repairs. You know what is going to happen in terms of the shortage and the procurement and so on. And because you have that knowledge, that institutional knowledge, you have to now apply that to the reality that on the ground. And meet the demands and ensure that schools are open in a timely fashion. These little things are what makes the difference. And now you have to now throw off the educational timetable, with the curriculum. I heard Curtis was asking that question. How the hell now do we then factor in that last week? Where do we make it up? There was no announcement on that. Do we make that week up in the curriculum at the end of this term or the next term? Do we shorten the Easter break period? All of these things. So there are broader implications to that. And now are schools now going to complete the curriculum in time? But I'll tell you, they will open school by a week and they will still not be ready. And I'm not saying it in a celebratory way, I'm very disappointed. Very disappointed. And it shows it's the lack of seriousness, the lack of administrative quality checks and controls, and the lack of leadership and governance. Let us put it where it's at. That is point blank what it is. So you have to, and then you bring this week, 3 days before school was to open. You bring this VAT-free day, and half the things on the list. You think people are going to wait until that last hour to parents to procure their school supplies, and then the stuff that you're exempting, a lot of them are already VAT free, VAT exempted, zero rated under the previous government. As in, you're trying to fool and hoodwink people. You know you can't afford another VAT free day. You know you can't afford it in August. So most of the items that are zero rated, you say, oh, well, these are the things that we're going to have the VAT free day on. You limit the amount of what can be accessed. And all this administration is doing is hoodwinking the people. And if people clap for that, yeah, another VAT free day. But you're telling me in the, a week, couple days to a week before school open is when you're providing this. Meanwhile, nearly majority of the 90% of the country, they would have already, the parents procured their stuff for school in early August, at the end of July.
Yeah, because people were asking about this VAT free day since after school closed. So people were asking, well, when are we going to have this thing? Because parents have to plan.
So who's fooling who? And that is the real crux of the matter. But I'm going back to the school delay. We should not be experienced. There's nothing major that is taking place in St. Vincent and the Grenadines currently. It's not a natural disaster. We didn't have any major challenges where we had to use schools over the summer period. There's absolutely no excuse why schools should be delayed. And we have this delayed start to the fall semester. Absolutely no excuse. And I've pointed to the things, and we saw this coming. And I told you, I sat with the former Prime Minister. We had this conversation very casually. Said, this is going to be a challenge. Because by then, we suspected that they had not done the things that we would traditionally do. To ensure that all of the engines are running, full pistons are running, everything is in order. Finances releasing on time the funding to education and to transport and works and Braxa to ensure that all of the repair work, the procurement of the furnishing, the teacher shortages are addressed and so on. All of the engines have to be running full throttle. You miss one, then even if the others are performing, they will be affected. Because if you repair the schools but you don't have teachers, or you repair the schools but you don't have furnishing, or you have furnishing but you don't repair the schools, just think about it.
Yeah.
It has to be symmetry in how it's done. And then everybody just accept this thing like normal. Schools are delayed by a whole week and it's normal. Nobody come out to say about what is going on. No justification is even given for that matter. If you say, well, we had an outbreak of dengue or we had a disaster and then we had to use some schools as shelters. There's absolutely nothing that took place within the last few months that warranted this, but there's no justification given to the country as to why the delay. Something is, people say, something not right. Something really not right.
Yeah.
And nobody questioning these things. So there's more to it behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And we're asking for that accountability. We want to know what is the justification for the delay. There's something behind there that is happening. And is it the delayed release of funding? Is it that somebody missed the ball in the procurement of both materials for furnishing and also for materials for contractors for repairs? What is the justification? What is the delay? And the answers to that goes to the heart of good governance and a great appreciation of how government work. It is not just left to the technocrats. Everybody had to put their hands on board and get this thing done so that we can have the operation, the timely operation of schools, and not just with schools, but other projects and in other ministries. And you're seeing the weaknesses coming out in relation to this NDP administration.
There's another one. Someone is asking, well, at first they're saying that they want to big up Thirsty Water for continue to their contribution towards the school feeding program. And they're wondering because before when this administration took office, the school children turned up at some of the schools and they were told that, that was closed. And they're realizing that a couple of weeks ago they saw a post stating that the Thirsty Water had hand over $50,000. So they're wondering if, you guys have any knowledge as to if they will be continuing the program despite the post is already seen by many people. They want to know if you guys have any knowledge as to if it will continue.
And the program they're referring to, just to be clear, is it the school feeding program?
Thirsty Water, yeah.
Which was through the Zero Hunger Trust?
And
Right.
there's also the Zero Hunger, yes, the program.
Right, because primarily it's the Zero Hunger Trust Fund.
Yeah.
And of course, as a government, you always encourage public-private partnerships. So I'm assuming Thirsty Water was one of those. I'm not sure about those specifics.
Okay.
But as far as I am aware, and we mentioned it months ago, that the Zero Hunger Trust Fund celebrated 10 years of existence. And we reflected on a lot of the work that the trust fund did, even during Soufre, during COVID, when we had the dengue fever outbreak, where meals were being delivered to children in different areas, especially in the rural parts of the country.
And we expanded the program to many schools across the country.
Well, this is it.
Yeah.
So it would be a shame that after celebrating, and much was made about it, as it should have been, a 10th anniversary celebration was held, and it would be a shame if after celebrating 10 years, schools are being told, our children are being told that program, it's not available. So is it that the children didn't get meals? I'm assuming, based on what was
Yes.
The way they're shaving, the way they're cutting budgets now, I'm not surprised that everything in that we had ruled out, every social program, will be affected.
Yeah.
And someone else is saying, do you remember the campaign they were going they said they were going to have a team of constantly monitoring the schools and police stations for repairs? The NDP team.
But, we had budgeted on the Saudi fund. We had budgeted the funding for the construction of new police stations and the rehabilitation of police stations.
I remember that.
Mainly in Montrose, the old Montrose barracks. I know Barley, in particular, repairs to Barley Leyu. I think out in Stubbs as well. There was a new one that was to be constructed there. In Rosal, Chateaubriand, rehabilitative work, and the construction of a new police station for Spring Village.
I remember that.
Was also on in the budget. I can't tell you where those are now, because the very condition still exists in a lot of the police stations, and we had the funds allocated, we had the budget allocated.
And funds negotiated.
And the funds were negotiated.
Secured.
And ready to be drawn down. So, listen, when they talk about meeting the Treasury MD, there's a lot of funding that was there. Even if not in the Treasury, all you have to do is just sign off and to trigger the release of these funds, including rehabilitative and work and construction of new police stations. technical institutes as well.
And we did speak about this, Carlos, shortly after the budget. We did raise the issue of what appears to be the putting on ice of the Saudi funding for a lot of significant projects. So that's the result.
Yeah, so these are some of the shortcomings which you will continue to see, and we don't want to turn on the record into a beat up on NDP government program, but we are just highlighting some shortcomings which we think are things which can be easily managed. And if these things are not easily managed, it goes to the heart. When you dissect the government, it goes to the heart of how the weaknesses that are there in the current administration, the lack of experience, the lack of any kind of serious strong leadership. It goes to the heart of these things. And by and large, we're not celebrating that, because it affects the ordinary working people in the country. Because a lot of the programs we had put in place there, Monique, were programs specifically targeting the poor and vulnerable and the working people of St. Vincent and
Well, the Prime Minister doesn't seem to think so. I listened briefly on my way here. He was on NBC Radio this morning, and he was talking about the Moody report. And one of the things he said is that, we were on a precipice of debt distress, and that the previous government, since 2016, we were being warned and we were just spending. I know how I feel about these disingenuous statements, and they're very loaded. You're making it sound as if we had a blank check and we were just spending all willy-nilly. But you have to put things into context. And we've spoken about this before, when we look at development versus having to respond to the series of natural disasters that we've experienced, when we had to respond to COVID and people in the informal sectors losing work and having to put safety nets in place. Nothing is done in isolation, and I am still hopeful. I don't know how much hope I have left, but I'm still hopeful that when we are speaking about these issues, that we will be genuine and we will be honest in our conversations. Because you can't tell me, you can't make a statement. And the Prime Minister, I've noticed he's known now to be making these statements just, nonchalant and, the government was just spending. I mean, in the last term alone, we had to respond. If it was a COVID, it was dengue. If it was a dengue, it was Sufri. If it was a Sufri, it was Elsa. Then tropical storm Brett. Then other natural hazards from other climatic events, heavy rainfall. Then there was Beryl. And the monies that we spent, the monies that we secured and the monies that we spent were to maintain that same social fabric that our comrade leader speaks so much about, maintaining that so that the country doesn't fall away.
The difference is, and the fundamental difference is, Keisal, is that we were able to manage the debt, had programs in place, and had ensured that there was economic growth, robust economic growth, while still servicing these debt levels. So you're telling me, you can't afford to do it because you lack the creativity and the imagination to lead a country. And that is essentially what his statement is saying indirectly to people. Well, the ULP was able to do it. They spent. The question is, they spent on what, as you outlined?
No, but he just said we were just spending.
Right?
So
but you
we
just outlined what we were spending on, fine. But okay, they spent. But they were able to ensure that programs were well in place and there was economic growth at the same time.
Houses were being repaired.
How are you not able to do the same thing? What is the challenge you have now?
Income support was being paid. Income support and business support, especially for businesses who are affected by Beryl. You remember, we were getting ready to roll out that so that business people could get some support to rebuild their businesses. That is where the money went. And there are people who would look me dead in the eye and say, we've been just spending. Wild with all the money.
Somebody said how they met the treasury empty, but brand new vehicles, and for the Prime Minister, and they budgeted about 2 point something million, for vehicles and the repair of the Prime Minister residence.
By the way, how is that going? Maybe we need to ask that question in Parliament.
We should
because
take a visit. We should visit it.
The Treasury, because one of the members in the House had said it's the people's residence. And he's right, he's not wrong. So we should really be making a point, and that might be part of the work of the Public Accounts Committee too.
Yeah, 50,000 they spent US to paint on the flag and into Caribbean.
Meanwhile, rent is being paid for the Prime Minister to live elsewhere when the immediate former Prime Minister and his wife and family were living there. Events were hosted there.
Yeah.
I had meetings there with the Prime Minister where he hosted meetings. So
just weeks before the election.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell you, and there are some homeowners with the burial relief program. Some homeowners that they have not paid months. They have not paid them in relation to rental accommodation.
That's another one too.
Burial.
That's where the money went.
Yeah.
Paying for accommodation for people who are affected by burial.
We had budgeted about $3 million to be spent on that in one fiscal year. Now they don't have the money to pay the homeowners. They're not paying them. But you can spend 50,000 US to paint on a flag on Inter Caribbean.
Well, that's
you can buy brand new vehicles for the Prime Minister fleet. You can go and repair a pool up by the Prime Minister residence. It's about prioritizing where the resources are spent.
Definitely.
And spend it on the poor and working and vulnerable people of the country. Tell me what is wrong with those vehicles that were driving up and down.
They're still driving up and down.
They're still walking, right?
They're still walking, looking shiny and nice.
So you're going to wait 1 more year? 1 more year and drive around in one of those vehicles?
I remember during Parliament when the Prime Minister said, oh, well, this is what they said. The vehicles were due for a swap out anyway. And then our comrade leader said, well, I know not about that because I was using those vehicles. I'm paraphrasing, but, it was to that effect that I was using those vehicles.
Alexander is saying 50 million to put the flag on. No, it's not 50,000 US because 100 and something thousand EC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I saw creatives up in arms saying you could find money for that on the guise of promoting St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but you have creatives here doing things to promote.
I will tell you something.
No partnership for us.
Being a former Minister of Tourism, that brings absolutely no benefit to the country. I'll tell you that. Zero benefit. And I'll tell you something. There are other countries, they have done it. And the way they have done it, and I can explain how it's done. It's not just the branding of the plane, but they have negotiated into that access to flights. So, for instance, I'll use, let's say, St. Kitts, where we are geographically positioned. St. Vincent is a natural hub. To get to St. Lucia, to get to Grenada, you got to come to Barbados or through St. Vincent. So they're going to come here regardless. But somewhere like St. Kitts, that is off the route in terms of Antigua, you come down Antigua, Dominica, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Barbados. St. Kitts is off. So St. Kitts had to go and negotiate within the Caribbean an arrangement so that there are no direct flights from St. Kitts straight from Barbados to St. Kitts. So any of the islands can now go to Barbados and get a flight to St. Kitts. I recall when those negotiations were taking place because I was integral in what is happening in tourism. So I can understand St. Kitts signing off. They were one of the first countries to sign on that. But they didn't just come with doing the painting of the flag on the plane, on the tail. They negotiated flights to have new routes and new flights going into St. Kitts because they are not a natural hub to connect as a connecting point. But St. Vincent and the Grenadines, they have to come here regardless. You don't need to pay them to come here. Because it's a natural hub based on the geographical location. Let us understand, you don't just follow fashion because you see somebody paint on something, you're doing it. That's not how it's done. There's a reason why some of the countries did it. There's a perfectly good reason. Because the connectivity, it came with a package negotiated for more service to that island. But they have to come here. So these are some of the things which, we make these decisions. And by the way, they criticize Annette Mark this and that when she was at the Tourism Authority. They're now going to celebrate bringing the race car driver, the race car driver here. I think it's NASCAR.
I think is
yes.
his surname, yes.
That was negotiated. It was Annette who did all of hard work, I'll tell you how that started. The president of Tempo Media, who I think is originally from the Virgin Islands, and we met at a New York meeting, Caribbean Week in New York. And he said, Carlos, I want you to look at this thing because I'm close friends with the father of the guy Karut. I know him very well, and he's Vincentian. He has that Vincentian. Tempo, we want to partner with him, and we should collaborate and do something. And I said to him, well, that's a perfectly good idea because it's tapping into a niche in the source market where traditionally we don't advertise. In Formula One and those kind of racing events and so on.
And these are big, eh?
They are big. But it's a niche where sometimes you don't have the budget to do that.
Right.
And it's a niche where a lot of Caribbean islands don't tap into. And I credit him with that because it was the Tempo who actually approached us on it. And I said, no, I'm going to tap into this thing. We followed up with a conference call with myself, the head of Tempo, and the father of the race car driver, Karut, Mr. Karut. And he was very gracious. He facilitated the discussion. We negotiated what we're going to do. We're actually planning to have him home here, but not just here, but to also do a Caribbean launch. And we're going to take them up the islands to do one, I think in the islands, St. Thomas or one of those places. We're going to go to the western seaboard of the U.S. to do a launch as well. And we're going to, come home, bring him home with a celebratory, program. To do all the cleaning up on the nuts and bolts of that, I had several other things dealing with at the time. I said, look, good chatting with you guys, but I want to put you on to Annette Mark. She would finalize the arrangements. And we announced this in October of 2025. This was announced. So this is not even a new initiative coming from the current administration. It's something that Annette secured. They approached me on it. I had the initial conversation with the father of the race car driver and as well as Tempo. We had that collaboration. We pretty much formalized the arrangement, and then I had Annette close on the offer. Now it's been celebrated. It's something that has never been done before in St. Vincent, and it's now being done by the NDP. Not realizing that a lot of the things that they're doing are things which we had, in fact, negotiated or done the hard work. That in the Caribbean tale, I was approached by the CEO of Inter-Caribbean, and I quite frankly told him in very good and diplomatic terms. I said, look, listen, you have to fly to me anyway. I can support you with some other things, but I don't really think that it's practical to spend 50,000 US on that. What I was trying to negotiate with him was to have the flights into Caribbean. They're down the pipeline. They're likely to buy some larger planes and some larger jets. And I was trying to get him to come in from Puerto Rico, from San Juan into Grenada and into Canawan and St. Vincent. That would have been a better way to support and negotiate and support into Caribbean. Get in because it's a source market. There are a lot of people who fly to San Juan, connect to the Caribbean. But getting them to Sandals and to Soho and on Kanawan Island and other hotels across mainland. Getting that road, San Juan, St. George's, Kanawan, Argyle. That would make a better spend of your 50,000 US. But I told them at the time, and it was discussing this with them, and I said, look, listen, we're not going to waste $50,000 on that. They have to fly here anyway. It's not a new route. It's not a development of a route. But understandably, there are other islands who were able to do this because it allowed more access, because they had flights. To get to St. Kitts, I'm frequently in St. Kitts. You have to always get to Antigua, and from Antigua, sometimes you don't even get a flight to go over.
Antigua is always the hub.
But now you have direct flights from Barbados to straight to St. Kitts, immediate connectivity. That is what you spend $50,000 on. Not to just paint on because you see other countries doing it. There's a reason why some other countries are doing it without disclosing that to the media. So that discussion with getting the talented Karut here, again, I want to big up Annette Mack, who worked on that project. And as I said, the very inception of that discussion was Frederick Morton, who owns Temple Network. The discussion started with him and myself and the father of the young Karut. We had an initial discussion, and I said, I'm happy to do this. I'm happy to ensure that we're able to fly St. Vincent and the Grenadines flag. It's a new niche market which we can tap into, and the discussions in relation to that, I will have Annette close on the negotiations in relation to that. Again, so there's nothing new that is happening in tourism. That is an initiative that is from this administration. Absolutely nothing new. And even, as I said, even that tail for Inter-Caribbean, we had toned that down. We had declined to spend on that. Because there's absolutely no real value in doing that. Unlike some other countries, with that 50 grand that they spent US, they were able to now capitalize on new routes to get people into the islands, which had difficulty. But because of where we are located, we are a natural hub. Anytime there's intra-regional travel, you have to land in St. Vincent.
Yeah.
We are a natural hub. You don't need to spend for that. So, tourism is something I could close my eyes and tell you about, I've studied the industry. I've been at the forefront with industry leaders on this. So when that arrangement with Karut came, it's not even through the government. It is through Tempo with Frederick Morton, who is closely aligned with the father of young Karut. That is how that was secured. And it is Frederick who reached out to me, called me personally. We met in New York. We had a discussion on it. And we were to do some other business in relation to Tempo and St. Vincent and the Grenadines in terms of the African American market and the diaspora market and so on. But it was Frederick Morton and myself who had those first initial conversations and followed up with conference calls with the Karuts. And we were able to ensure that we have that secured. And it was announced. We announced it at our State of the Tourism Industry address last year, October. Again, nothing that is of new significance that this government has brought in to say they're doing anything with tourism. And there are people who are in the industry who are messaging me, deeply concerned that St. Vincent is pretty much now at a standstill as it concerns to tourism and what we're doing. I said, I gave the excuse that a lot of people are giving, and give them time. But meanwhile, you give them time, there's a market share that you're losing. The leading Caribbean destination in growth from the U.S. source market for the first quarter of last year, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. That's the market share that you're losing. So these are some of the things which people really really appreciate and understand. And when we did the Emancipation Cricket Festival, the amount of attention that brought to the island, and they rubbished it. But I want to tell you the difference with CPL. While we were promised, I'll tell you this: the CEO of CPL had suggested to me he wanted to bring matches here. And I said, well, it's something we can look at, but I want a team. And we were discussing with an investor who, at the time, was ready to commit to getting a team to St. Vincent. And in the spaces available, I don't want to go into too much details, but I understand that even West Indies cricket was saying hold on with adding teams at the time. Because it was Jamaica, and between Jamaica who was getting a new team, then there was St. Vincent and Grenada looking at getting teams. And they said, no, hold on the teams, advising CPL to hold off on adding more teams because they didn't want a team to be added on the ULP.
And that goes to the concern that was raised as to whether in the execution of duties, whether the Cricket West Indies could be impartial.
And what CPL did,
as it relates to the development of cricket.
CPL said to us, well, we may look at it down the road, maybe in a few next season or so. But could we get some games in St. Vincent? And while I was happy for them to come to St. Vincent, I would have opted for having a team, not coming here to play matches. And I'll tell you the difference with that. When we had the Emancipation Cricket Festival, we pretty much brought on every local player to play. We had international cricketers, we had regional cricketers, West Indies cricketers, we had the legends who came in as well. But we had local cricketers who were part of it. Some of the local cricketers, they were contracted to the teams. And they were paid. Some of them, it was the most money that they ever made playing professional cricket. You tell me which one of the CPL teams now are hiring local people to play with them. Who are coming here, save for if you have been a professional cricketer. You had nearly the entire North Leeward, the entire Windward. Remember we had a team from Beckway, from the Grenadines as well. Majority of those players were development cricketers, young cricketers. And they were paid after every match. And they were playing along the likes of international cricketers. And
I remembered how happy many of them were to be given that opportunity and that exposure.
Yeah. So that is the, and then they rubbished. And in fact, wrote letters to CPL to tell them
that whole basa.
they should not allow us to have the ECF. But the ECF was all inclusive, and the ECF allowed for local players to be contracted to play along international cricketers, and they actually benefited. It was some of the most money that some of the local players were ever contracted to play. So all of these things, there's a lot I can say, and I can write a book about the nasty nature of some of the persons who are affiliated with the NDP and what they do behind the scenes in other forums to boycott St. Vincent and the Grenadines, as a country. So while we were negotiating to have the CPL team, and there were discussions, not St. Vincent as a country directly, we were supporting an investor who was a group of investors who were ready and willing to come in and had the resources. And every time they went to the negotiation, they raised the prices. And the group of investors said, whatever the price, whatever it takes, we're ready to come in.
I remember I was excited that we would have our own team.
So we were negotiating to have a team.
And we don't had an adapter team
and
from
the
another
investors,
country.
every time they shortchanged investors, they said, well, the price we're giving you at this meeting, the next meeting it went up.
Wow.
And they said, it didn't deter them. They were still insistent on coming, and they still wanted to be a part of the CPL makeup and to have St. Vincent as a training ground. And what they were negotiating with us was also a development program where a lot of the youth cricket, they will sponsor all of the youth cricket in the installation of bowling machines, year-round training, have a training facility for sports science to deal with developmental cricket for young people.
Yeah.
That is what had sold me. And the team would pretty much be based there, where they will fill all the hotels and have the backroom staff, the experts who are coming in, the bowling coaches, fielding coaches, administrative staff, a lot of them. And most of them would have been local people, trained and hired to do work.
Yeah.
But for some reason, there was a delay in announcing a second team. And that delay was based on advice from certain circles. And that is why the matchup was between Grenada and St. Vincent. But we had the upper hand because we had the investors ready to come in. And no matter the cost, they wanted to come in. And along with that, they were going to bring other developmental things like hotel development and tourism development and so on. They had a group of investors ready to come in to invest. All these were already negotiated. So now you're going to celebrate having a CPL teams here. Not a Vincentian team, but teams here, which pretty much when that was offered to me, I said, well, that's neither here nor there for me. I want St. Vincent and the Grenadines to benefit year-round from this thing, internationally from this thing.
We want St. Vincent and the Grenadines to enter the chat.
Yeah.
As the young people say.
And not just from the level of participating as a team in the games, but also the back-end development. That's where the resources are. The developmental part of it with youth development cricket, the sports science facility that they were going to be building here, the hotels that they were going to invest in as well as part of the package.
And exposure for the young cricketers too.
And the exposure and the training,
recruits,
the sports science behind it. All of those things were negotiated. And I'm of the view that there were certain quarters who did not want us at the time to have the CPL team. But now, of course, you can look forward to an announcement of a CPL team. That may very well be on the cards.
Yeah.
And it may happen in 2027.
Yeah.
Because when in the discussions with CPL, they had said, well, St. Vincent, is St. Vincent government supporting these guys who want to come in? We said, yes. I flew to Barbados and had a meeting over there with them, with CPL. I said, are you supporting these guys? I said, yes, we're offering you some games now, and maybe later in 2027 or so thereabout, we can add, St. Vincent to have a team. I said, well, that's not my interest right now. My interest is having this thing secured. No, because we are ready and we have the resources. We have the investors who are ready, and they're ready to pump the resources in. But my advice internally and off the record were that there were some individuals who were trying to block St. Vincent and the Grenadines from having this team.
I'm not surprised.
There is during the Cricket World Cup, I will tell you, there is a Vincentian whose name came up in a meeting at the ICC and Cricket West Indies level to become an ambassador for the ICC World Cup. And a particular individual said, oh, let's not use that individual. And I'm going to call the individual name is Kesrick Williams. A particular individual said, he's not recommending that we use that individual as an ambassador for ICC for the World Cup. Believe it or not. These are the kind of things that happening behind the scenes,
The powers
and for whatever reason they have against Kesrick Williams, he should not be made an ambassador. The ambassadors were being paid very well.
The powers that be,
Very
my
well.
friend.
So when you watch what the investors were making, and Keswick, who's well loved by everybody, young, dynamic sportsman and cricketer, should not become an ambassador for ICC for the Cricket World Cup. And there are people in rooms who gatekeeping and telling the persons who are making these decisions, I don't think he can make the cut.
I don't want to laugh, but
when you have there are a lot of flies in rooms, in meetings, when you think these meetings are confidential.
To be a fly on the wall.
Don't think we don't have briefcases, But and that's the point. But we have decorum and tact, and we're decent people. We know exactly what's going on, and there are a lot of gatekeeping that is taking place, especially in cricket administration. That Keswick Williams was denied the opportunity to be paid as a global ambassador in the ICC Cricket World Cup in the Caribbean. So all of these things, they're nasty, dirty people who put on suits and parade as they're decent people. They're not decent.
So in the final analysis, and I always look on the point of Vinci pride and our representation out there. So for the World Cup, there was no Vincent Chan selected as an ambassador.
At the time, his name was proffered, and I think we had a few other names. But I can tell you where my information was that there are persons who said rejected his name.
Wow.
Quite frankly, that is not somebody who can we can use and bring anybody to the park, and it doesn't make sense.
This is a former West Indies cricket player.
Yeah.
Wow.
Keswick Williams.
Wow. Big up my friend Keswick anyway.
So, one of these days, Monique, we'll write a book about these things, eh? We'll write a book about these things.
Bust some files.
So when I tell you CPL is coming up next week, I'm none the least excited because I know where we were in terms of negotiations with that group of investors who wanted to come in. And no matter the price that CPL was calling, they were willing to pay for it.
Right.
And said we're comfortable with the arrangements for St. Vincent. We want to go to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. That's where we want to set up our team. And they keep raising the prices. It's this figure, it's that figure. The next meeting is another figure. And they said, that's okay. What? We want to close it. Okay, well, they didn't get blocked based on the price. But somebody somewhere delayed them coming in. Having CPL delayed the decision to add more teams apart from Jamaica. Because at least 2 more teams were to be added. And they delayed the announcement of one of those teams until later, I believe the year 2027, you may hear the announcement of that team. And it may very well be St. Vincent. But I can say to you, the discussions were already advanced, and there was a group of investors ready to come in to have a CPL team in St. Vincent. And as I said, it was not even so much about having the CPL team, but the benefits of in the back end to that. The sport development program, working with all of the youth development cricketers, a sports science facility, which was going to be a big part of the investment. And in addition to that, looking at room stock in terms of hotel accommodation and sports science and medical tourism, because the idea was to get more people to come here to do surgeries and to do rehabilitation and so on in relation to sports programs and so on. So a lot of it was going to be sports science, which would only benefit young people in the country. To the point where I had gone to Barbados and met with CPL. I never announced this to people. And CPL can't deny that I've met with them. But there's a reason why I have had meetings with them. It's not just to show my face and to say, hi, how are you doing? There must be a reason why we're meeting, right? And that is the evidence of discussions, advanced discussions surrounding getting a team to St. Vincent. And they made the same offer. I wasn't interested in games. I was interested in having a team here and the back end to that, a sport development program, sport tourism development program for the country. But you had some bad-minded people in certain circles block it, just like how they tried to block the ECF, the Emancipation Cricket Festival. And that is what was taking place. So I say all that to say, well, there's short-sightedness in thinking. And when people will celebrate, oh yes, we have a flag on the tail of Inter-Caribbean. We've been there, rejected that. Oh, we are bringing CPL. CPL is coming to St. Vincent. We have been there. And from all that I've said earlier, could have secured those games even earlier than 2026. But for the fact that there were other forces at play guiding the direction of how CPL operated.
Yeah. So, Carlos, my clock is saying 12:58.
Yeah. I just, before we close, I just want to, a lot of people will be still not having a clear appreciation of what took place in the election petitions. And I want to, without going into the great details of the case, it's still a matter before the court. And, not to go into so much details, but just to say, we had a full few days of hearing, started on Tuesday last week, ended on Thursday. And during that first part of the hearing, to our surprise, the very first thing that the respondents tried to do was to block the expert witness from testifying. This is an expert on Canadian law who will come to the court and explain to the court, well, this is the law in Canada as to how you obtain Canadian citizenship. This is what is contained in the oath of allegiance. This is how you obtain a passport. You don't have to swear an oath to have a passport, but you do have to swear an oath to become a citizen, which is a prerequisite to owning a passport.
Right.
So all of those things were explained and what is the law in relation to that. To our surprise, the very first day of the hearing, they objected to adducing the evidence of the expert. We said, okay, well, this is strange. You say, okay, well, rather than bringing the expert first, I say, let us get in the rest of the case first. So we heard evidence from the petitioners, Augustus Carlos Williams and Luke Brown. We heard evidence from other witnesses that they called to give evidence to confirm that they, in fact, knew about the disqualification as they heard about it. They heard and saw notices being published, both on social media and physically in the respective constituencies, and they also read it in the newspapers. This was not disputed, of course. They provided exhibits to show these notices being posted and these notices being published and so on. Then, after the evidence of all of those witnesses, we then had the expert to give evidence. Again, we had about a full day of objection, submissions to prevent the expert from giving evidence. When we succeeded in getting the court to agree to hear the evidence, we then wanted the expert to amplify the evidence, because they also have an expert witness who then read the report of our expert and added information to their report, pretty much being critical of the report of the expert. So we said, okay, well, it's only fair that you gave the expert the opportunity to respond to those the critique of the second expert in the matter. And again, they objected to that. The court overruled the objection and said we'll allow the amplification for the expert to explain what they meant by what was placed in the report and contrary to what is being said by the second expert in the matter. Then they spent an entire day trying to discredit the expert. Bringing all kind of things to the court. Oh, the expert did this and it should not have. They did this and the court essentially heard the evidence. And now, at the end of last Thursday, the all of the expert evidence and the case for the petitioners are in, and it is now coming back from August the 31st to the first week in August. We go back to court for the continuation of the trial, where we will hear from the respondents, which is going to be interesting. They will also be cross-examined.
Okay.
And we'll hear from the witnesses for the respondents as well in relation to the matter. So it continues on August the 31st into the first week, I think up to September 4th, in relation to that matter. So that trial is well on its way. It's one of the very few occasions we've had, I would say, a petition being brought to the election petitions court, and there was little success in throwing it out. In fact, all of the evidence was accepted by the court, and it is now in, and it is now the time for the respondents to hear their side of their defense in relation to this, and then of course the court will then deliberate on the evidence. So that is on a matter which is still, as I said before, the court. And the important thing about that matter, and a lot of lawyers have been reaching out from the UK, from the rest of the Caribbean, expressing an interest in this hearing. The case, although it is very much involved in politics, it is not so much a political case, but a case that concerns the constitutional interpretation as to who is qualified or disqualified as a candidate. And whether the name is Friday or Bramble, it is a case that is going to be a landmark case that will make and help us make a clear decision going forward as to anyone who may want to choose to become a candidate, whether swearing an allegiance to another country is an acceptable form of qualification, while at the same time having dual citizenship. While the argument is that having dual citizenship is not the issue. The issue is whether or not you have sworn an allegiance to another foreign power, to another state.
Right.
And that is the narrow interpretation the court has to deliberate on. So it is not an issue of voter fraud or an issue of mutilated ballots, which we have had in several other cases before the courts in St. Vincent and Grenadines. It's not an issue of cheating. The word cheating here, not in the sense of being a cheat, but bribing persons to vote or enticing persons to vote. These are not the grounds in which this case is rested on. What this case is rested on is a very narrow point in law of the interpretation of what the Constitution says. Very, very narrow scope or wiggle room to do any other thing apart from just the narrow interpretation of the law. And those who practice constitutional law before the courts, this is in fact my second election petition case. I was fortunate to be in the one in 2015. It may not be the last one. I may travel to other islands to do constitutional matters and election petition matters, as it's a growing niche among certain lawyers. We have had Mendez and Astafan, who are senior counsel from Trinidad and Dominica respectively, Stuart Young, who has also an experienced senior counsel, have done matters before in election petition, the jurisdiction that handles election petition matters. So it's a developing niche within the law itself, and we're going to continue to follow that case and to give you updates on it. But as I said, this case really determines the future going forward as to who is qualified, what are the grounds for qualification and disqualification, and whether someone who has sworn an allegiance to another state or foreign power can be considered eligible for elections in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And these are the narrow points of law in which the court is to to consider for interpretation, judicial interpretation, and then as in relation to the Constitution. And let us follow this case keenly. I would not say much more in relation to it, but to state that the petitioners have concluded their case. Their evidence is including their expert evidence in relation to Canadian law, and it is the turn of the petitioners, the respondents, to now provide evidence on August the 31st in relation to that matter. So that's pretty much where that is, and we'll keep you up to date in relation to that matters as we get back to the court in relation to the petition hearing. Keisal, we're now at 1. I don't know if there are any persons. We'll take just a few calls today. We had a lot of information today.
Yeah.
We'll take a few calls in relation if the lines are open, Monique.
Well, the lines are open.
We can take a few calls. Of course, the number 5347827. Your star line and WhatsApp 5347827. We'll take a few calls to those who may want to provide any information or to share with us in relation questions or in relation to today's matter.
Persons are really excited and really appreciate the information, especially on the petition matter that is ongoing. If you check the live, you will see. They're really excited.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something to look forward to. I think a lot of, I don't get the sense of a lot of Vincentians are fully appreciative of what the importance of this matter. Again, it's not a political attack on the NDP or either of the respondents. It is really just to bring some clarity, long deserved clarity to this matter. And then some may ask, why are you only now bringing this matter now?
Well, I saw one of the respondents asking that question.
Right. And I want to also make it very clear that before the year 2020, there was always a gray area about it. And the courts over the years, they have been narrowing the scope in terms of persons who have sworn allegiances to other countries. There are plethora of cases. The Vaz case in Jamaica, they had to relinquish their U.S. citizenship. The Hewitt case in the Cayman Islands, though they did not have to relinquish their citizenship because they were considered duly qualified by the mere fact that they were born in the U.S. as opposed to swearing an allegiance or acquiring that citizenship by way of naturalization. We have a caller on the line. Yes, caller, welcome to the program. You're on the record.
Miss Peter and Carlos, how are you doing? What I'd like to ask, how the case going on between Brown and Kelly? Are he is still allowed to govern the country until the case finished?
The answer to that is yes. The answer to that, while the matter is ongoing, he is still elected as Prime Minister, and even if the matter comes to a conclusion and it is against them, we have of the very view that they may very well appeal this matter. They may ask for a stay of the proceedings until they're able to get their house in order, whatever that means in terms of whether they resign or renounce their citizenship. But he is still the Prime Minister. But we're just testing the constitutionality of that.
The reason why I asked that question, I just been out of the box because I said, well, if in the police post and I don't understand, but within America, what you call it, if a policeman shoot a guy, they'll tell him he had to be home. Hospital will have a pay until the case here. Until the case, if the case come against him, he come back to you. Otherwise, they tell him he has to stay home until the case and so on. That's why I asked the question. And not too long before, along with the cricket system, that is, I'm glad how you're highlighting everybody going on because I know we don't want to call the same guy shallow. What's going on to West Indies cricket? And the guy from Chumaka, Denver. You might know he from a cricket family. More Marvin Gray. Yes, that was Johnson's brother. Son, Johnson's brother, daughter Wilma Pompey. Yeah? So he come from and I Kenneth Denver. He come from a cricket and I'm glad to see how they're holding up their head. So if they really push and we need games, he never pushed for games for St. Vincent. So he never has St. Vincent heart.
Yeah.
So I'm glad how you're exposing and bringing it to highlight. Because all you're doing, and I'm still waiting, Carlos, for some come at him. When they're going to start, the money is there. But when you're going to start, nobody knows when.
That's right. I addressed that a bit earlier. Thank you very much. Thank you for highlighting that.
So, Carlos, I have an inquiry here. In terms of the petition case, can persons attend? Is it in open court?
It is in open court. It's available to persons in the public. There's a public gallery can attend. You're free to do so. It's open to persons. It resumes on August the 31st. So I was making the point that there's that vast case in Jamaica. There's a Hewitt case in the Cayman, and also in Dominica there was a case against Roosevelt Skerritt there, though it went against the petitioners. The issue is that they had no proof that the respondents had sworn an allegiance to another foreign power by the mere virtue of having a passport or citizenship. But what really came home was that case in St. Kitts and Nevis with Denzel Douglas, where he obtained a passport from Dominica, and the court said it doesn't matter not whether you are from an OECS sister country, it doesn't matter that it is a Caribbean country or a CARICOM country or a Commonwealth country. From the mere fact that you have obtained the passport, there is some grounds there that you have sworn an allegiance to a foreign power, because by virtue of having the passport comes with it certain elements such as you're now protected by the state who has issued you the passport. If you're traveling and you're arrested somewhere, let's say in Kazakhstan or Israel or Iran, on a passport, that state is responsible for you. Their foreign missions and diplomats will fly there and reach out to the officials there through diplomatic channels on your behalf. And by virtue of that, you've sworn an allegiance. And these are the decisions over time. And the Denzel case was in 2020, a very recent case. And while I'm not preempting, by this discussion, preempting the court's ruling or the matter which is ongoing, I'm just giving you an idea of why this matter is being brought now. Because all of these case law, when developed over time, are now creating in law a particular direction in which judges ought to follow. They're called precedents. And some of the cases will apply to our own local jurisdiction and our own local laws. Some of them may not. Right? So I'm just generalizing it. I'm not telling you, well, this case is because of so and so. But all of those cases, when interpreted over time and developed over time, it's called developing case law, and where precedent in which a court will likely draw inferences or follow in terms of the ruling in cases that will come. And this is one such case here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But this case, I think, will then, I would say, pretty much give a very clear, definitive term as to the direction going forward of persons who are dual citizenship and persons who have sworn allegiance to other foreign power, or if at all, based on the fact that the Commonwealth is mentioned in our Constitution, whether it's considered a foreign power. These are questions for the court to answer. And we have an experienced judge who have sat at the appellate level in the Court of Appeal of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court. She has had a wealth of experience. I've tried similar matters before in election petitions court. And she has the experience and the competence to hear this matter. At least that is something which I think, outside of all of the evidence, is the fact that we have a very experienced judge who knows what to look for, what salient points of law, what to apply, what not to apply in relation to that. And that is pretty much what it is. And so we go back to court on the 31st of August, and from there we'll see how that progresses.
Okay. Any other call?
Okay, I think we have a call.
We have a caller?
Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
Good afternoon. You're on the record.
Huh? Okay. Hi. How are you guys doing?
We are good. How are you?
Good. I'm blessed. I missed a lot of you guys program because I was doing laundry. It was a long weekend.
Well, luckily for you could go back on the Facebook Live and rewatch it.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
But I just want to remind Vincentian that Friday and Bramble and their parties manipulating the public. They know exactly why the petition is against them. I mean, they understand what pledging allegiance mean. They know very well that Canada, United States, England, like say for instance something happened, war, disaster, anything, these nations send for their citizens, which included Friday and Bramble. Meaning that anything happening in where they are, where Canadian citizens are, American citizens are, English citizens are, anything war, as I said, they send plane for these people. And so Friday and Bramble, they could be, they are part of it too, if anything for Vinci. And they have to send, Canada have to send for their citizens. Them I want to, them never gonna remember that they are minister of the land.
And Prime Minister.
You're quite right. If something happens, God forbid, I'm not wishing anything to happen to any of them. At the end of the day, I wish everybody good health and strength. But let's say something were to happen and they become critically ill or they were to be found somewhere deceased. And it is leading to an investigation that something untowards happened or there was mischief. The Canadian officials will fly here. They will come to St. Vincent to investigate because they are Canadians.
That's right.
The same thing applies if you're an American citizen.
Yeah.
Anywhere in the world you go and there's
That's
a death
right.
of an American citizen or an American citizen is arrested in prison. You can book it, show that the consular office and the diplomatic officials will be here and walk in the diplomatic channels.
Yeah.
They will be here.
But that's right. That is the main reason
Carla.
of pledging allegiance, because they are citizens of another nation and they know the truth. And so if they were in a position, they would have pumped upon this. They would have feel good and great about that they have this in court, because they would have think that they have a case. And you know what I mean? So they are manipulating the country, and the country need to be educated more. Somebody need to explain and break it down like how you're doing it, Carlos James. Somebody need to do it. Come on. A lot of people then think, oh, they win so big. And it's not about the winning. Not. It's like them man are citizens for another country that they, God forbid anything to happen. Friday never business. He's the prime minister. Like today.
Yeah, I know you're quite
That's
right.
all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carla. I'm glad that the caller raised this issue, because one of the points I intended to make, had those bills been tabled, well, not just tabled, but debated in relation to the amendments to the Constitution and the Representation of People Act. One of the points I intended to make was an excerpt from Jamaica's Prime Minister, Andrew Holness, who, when this question was posed to him about the issue of citizenship, having citizenship of another country, and being a political leader and an aspiring Prime Minister. And I remembered his response was very measured, and he was careful because he was cognizant of the existence of a diaspora scattered all over the world, full of Jamaicans, and that people would want to make their contribution to their country. There's nothing wrong with that. But he went on to say that if you are putting yourself forward to be the ultimate leader of a country, your citizens should feel comfortable and they should rest assured that if anything were to happen in that country that you are leading, that you do not have a parachute or a lifeboat or a life jacket or a rescue team to get you out of there. And this issue, these questions were posed to him because there's a similar conversation in Jamaica, I believe, with the opposition leader, where he has British citizenship. And, you know, it's whether he's qualified. Similar questions and conversations. But when I read that, it struck me, and he is right. Prime Minister Holness is right, and as fate would have it, he is very good friends with our Prime Minister. In fact, I believe their parties are aligned in terms of the Democratic Union that they are all members to, that is tied to the Republican Party in the States. They are sister parties, and to hear a Prime Minister of a sister party say this, that as the Prime Minister, people should feel comfortable that, boy, if the ship going down, my Prime Minister with me to the very end. You know, and I remember when the case started, when he spoke with the reporters, oh, you know, I'm Prime Minister of the country, I have so much work to do and I have to be here, you know, and basically said, well, this is a waste of time and waste of the court's time. But you should not have put yourself in that position. As the Prime Minister, you have a lot of important things to do. We are going through a cost of living crisis, as NDP would always remind us. So many things are happening in the country. People already feel as if the Prime Minister is absent. And now you have to spend your time as Prime Minister in court defending something that you could have dealt with
But not just,
prior to becoming Prime Minister.
but not just that, you know, all of the cabinet came for the Tuesday, the
Repeat
Wednesday,
that.
and the Thursday. All of the cabinet.
So the cabinet members don't have work
but
to
that's
do.
the point.
I mean,
We were
as a
wondering,
minister,
who minister in the right mind can come to court the entire week to sit down for
so
the whole day?
if people want help with social welfare, Minister John is not there.
No.
If any disabled family
In fact, she was in the courtroom sleeping for the whole week. Every day I saw her sleeping. Had her head back and sleeping whole. They all came, and perhaps rightly so, they came to support their leader, you know, and colleague. But we asked the question: how is it every cabinet member attended the hearing all week? There was
not
no
even
cabinet.
like a little rotation.
Yeah, there's no cabinet.
Some of you come.
The government was on autopilot.
I remember we used to make a point where not all cabinet members would be in certain places.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
And that's for security reasons and
good
other... Yeah. Kojo?
You're on the record, man.
Kojo?
Yes,
You're on the record.
I want a lot of people to read. Yeah, I'm listening to you. I want a lot of people to go and read an oath. When you accept a citizenship,
Yeah.
people must realize when you accept citizenship of another country, you're denouncing your country to accept their country.
Yeah.
Regardless to whatever dual citizenship or whatever it is, you have to denounce your country. I have to denounce my country to become an American citizen. I'm not saying I proud of it, but that's what I have to do. I have to swear allegiance to America
Yeah.
and to defend America. I didn't say I have to defend citizens of America. I have to say I defend America. And when you say that in Canada, you ain't saying you're defending citizens and Canada. You're saying you're defending Canada. There's no oath of allegiance saying you're defending both. So I don't see why people keep telling me about, Commonwealth. I say, show me which mass land is called Commonwealth. Show me the land.
Yeah.
So you tell me the passport is a Commonwealth passport. There's no Commonwealth is a figurative of speech.
You made
an organization.
You made an important point there,
Yeah.
Kojo. Two important points I'm gonna raise from that. One is that I've heard the argument that, as you said, rightly said, it's one Commonwealth, so it's the same king. And incorrectly so. The King of Canada is not the same king of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, nor the same king of Great Britain.
Correct.
It may sound a bit weird and absurd.
Yeah.
But I want people to appreciate that in 1931, the Statute of Westminster created the separation of the realm. So the King of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, though it's the same individual, the function and role of the monarch in St. Vincent is separate and distinct as the function and role of the monarch of Britain and the monarch of Canada. That's the first thing to appreciate that, and that is
you're the lawyer, but each country have their own constitution that will make it different.
that is the point, Kojo. So in law, in 1931, the Statute of Westminster created that separation. That's and from every constitution, our constitution order from 1979 created St. Vincent as a sovereign state. So whatever hierarchy of governance we have, and the sovereign of that state is a distinct sovereign from the sovereign of Canada and a sovereign from Great Britain or any Commonwealth country for that matter. And that is notwithstanding that the individual is one person, but he functions in a role that is separate and distinct. And by virtue of an act of Parliament in Westminster, 1931, created that. You know, big man like Lauren Friday didn't know that, because he was in the Parliament saying, well, you know, I'm doubly qualified. I have my Canadian passport in my front pocket and my Vinci passport in my back pocket, and I am doubly qualified. You cannot be doubly qualified, because there is a separation of the sovereignty of each Commonwealth state, and as a result of that, the monarch. It's not because you have the King of England, meaning that the King of England is the king. The same king of the England is the same king of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It is the same individual, but the roles are legally distinct by law. The Statute of Westminster of 1931 created that.
The Carlos, even like traveling alone, you should know it's separated.
Yeah.
You have to have a visa to go to Canada.
Yeah.
Even though Canadians don't need a visa to come to St. Vincent. But you as a Vincent, you need a Canadian visa to go to Canada. Mm-hmm. If you are one land in one country and everything, you won't need no visa.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so those were some of the arguments, Kojo, and they were saying, oh, it's the same king. So I guess I had to give that distinction. So education, I mean, it's out there, it's available, it's free. People need to research these things.
There's a question someone was asking me, because they live abroad and they're having someone pay their house taxes. And somehow the person, when they write it, the receipt, they write it with the person who pays name. Was it supposed to be? Is that correct? Why are they putting the person who paid the name on the receipt and not the owner for the house?
Whose name is the house owner's name on the tax roll? Because
but when you ask someone to pay for it, they put in the person who paying the money name on top of the receipt and not his name. I think his name should be on top of it too. If he's
as
because
the
he
property
physically
owner.
can't go there and pay it.
That's strange. It should be in the name of the property owner. Because one of the things I realized during practice, even before I became a minister, is that when there are transactions for purchase of property, one of the things you have to make sure that you do as a solicitor is to have, if your client is the purchaser, to make sure that their name is entered onto the tax roll, so that future correspondences between the property owner and Inland Revenue will be between the rightful owner, the current owner, and any receipts that are issued, any notices that are issued should be in the name of the property owner. So I'm not sure why the middleman who's paying the bill would be, his name would appear on the bill and not the owner. The property owner needs to look into that, because that could be Carlos, that could be a bone of contention later down the road. Yeah. Because there are cases where, I mean, we get into a legal thing now, but there are cases where matters have come to the court where people say, I am the owner because I pay property tax. I mean, the courts have said the payment of property tax alone is not proof of ownership, or possession, if it's a case of possessory title. But the property owner needs to look into that with some lightning rapidity. Borrowing the words of my former colleague from St. Lucia.
Okay, I'll let them know.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, thanks for that piece of advice.
All
All
right.
right.
Excellent.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
All right. So, Monique, I know you want us to stay here with you for the whole afternoon,
The folks on the live as well.
Yeah. Maybe next time we could do an extended one, bring some food,
Goodies,
a little something to drink, some soursop juice, passion fruit.
Right.
Yeah. I like local juice.
Okay.
Monique, so that you know.
Right. And since you're on local, I'm sure you will love to try the cassava ice cream. Have you ever tasted it?
No, I have not.
Money next time I come here, I have that.
Have some,
You have to have that.
please. Please and thanks.
Cassava ice cream. I want to try that.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
All right.
We have tasted one. Sabi had given us a sample. It was breadfruit?
Probably
sweet.
could have been. I'm not sure.
And that was good.
Yeah, breadfruit.
Yeah. I
Plantain.
love the innovation.
Yeah, plantain as well.
So you went organize some.
Oh, it might have been plantain, I think it was plantain.
It was plantain ice cream.
It was plantain.
Okay.
You don't worry. I'll let you know.
Cassava ice cream.
You don't worry.
Might try
Don't
that.
worry. You don't
All right.
worry.
All right. Great.
All right, folks. We're now just after the hour of 1:30. What? We have 1:30, 1:34. I think it's the longest we've had this program.
Daki, we've more than made up for the time.
We nearly go up to 2, but we have some other pressing things to get done today,
Yes.
it was good being here with you guys and to share with you those who are listening across St. Vincent and the Grenadines, those in the diaspora, those who have been on the media with us and continue to share the program. We're happy to be here with you and to provide education, information, and to clarify a lot of things which we've done here on today's program. So it has been a packed program, and we were still able to manage to take in some calls, Keisal. And
Yes.
of course, we'll continue to keeping you up to date and putting all the evidence and information on the record for you right here on Star Radio.
Okay, as always, and you know this, all right, on the records program, definitely, all right, creeping up fastly behind the Good Morning Comrade program. Definitely number one talk show programs right here in SVG. So what we're going to do now, we're going to just take a small break.
Listen, some hardware stores have been ripping off Incensions for years with their high prices. Then came General Hardware with the lowest prices ever.